It was pretty cold with this pretty bitter wind blowing along these North Sea coasts, continuing to feed the cloud and the rain into eastern Scotland. So we'll see a bit more of it turning to snow again here over some of the higher routes by the end of today, and those rainfall totals really building up, especially close to the coast. We'll also see the rain turning to snow over some of the Transpennine routes through this evening's rush hour, so do bear that in mind, and further rain to come in parts of South Wales and southwest England where the yellow warning remains in place. The winds continue to blow and bring the cloud and the rain into eastern areas as we go through the night. Again, more snow over the higher ground. Will be chiefly rain that we see at lower levels. Again, some shelter in western Scotland, some clearer spells. But further outbreaks of rain continuing across the south. Temperatures mostly holding up above freezing. On to Friday, and again, for many tomorrow, it's a grey day. There'll be further outbreaks of rain to come across England and Wales and feeding into eastern areas off the North Sea. Again, with some shelter from that easterly wind, western Scotland may well do okay for dry and bright weather. A bit of sunshine here, may well be a fine day for Northern Ireland. Fairly cloudy, but some sunny spells are possible. Elsewhere, lots of cloud, further outbreaks of rain. Still double digits across the south, but many places feeling a lot colder than that. Bye for now.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good morning, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A68 north of Parthead, traffic is restricted after a road incident, so allow extra time. On the A4232 southbound, expect congestion from the M4 at junction 33, Capel Lanilturn to St Fagans. In Nottinghamshire, the A52 westbound is slow between the A46 and the A6011. In Kent, the A2 eastbound has a crash between the M2 and the A28. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast is delayed between Lancaster and Oxenholme Lake District, and Great Western Railway has disruption on some routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
First up, we've got Traitors. So probably now the biggest TV show in the country, and obviously a global hit as well. We've just been announced it's going to be a stage show coming sometime early next year, we think. And it's got huge prestige behind it. So Sam Mendes, who's major Hollywood director, Bond films, 1917, that incredible film, his company is behind it with All3 Media, which is the Dutch production company that originally created the Traitors concept. So a lot of backing behind it. We don't know which way it's going to swing yet, but the people that are, for example, director Robert Hastie, two of my favourite shows we were just talking about, Standing at the Sky's Edge, which is a very serious, dark show, and then Operation Mincemeat, which is an absolute lark silliness.
I have to say, my favourite show in the world, I've seen it 10 times.
Which one?
Mincemeat.
Oh, have you?
Yes, on Broadway and the West End.
Oh,
I'm
wonderful.
Absolutely obsessed by it.
Yeah, it's incredible. So the talent behind all of this is really exciting. Whether we're going to have sort of jazz hands and key changes, I don't know. No cast yet. I would love to see Claudia actually breaking some moves, but I don't think we'll get anyone like that in it.
It could be a bit of a comedy, is what you're suggesting.
I think it's going to be veering towards the lighter side of it, highly entertaining. And they've promised, we keep getting twists every season. The one thing they have said is they will be following the format, but there will be surprises. So this one we're very much looking forward to. More news to come if you meet me up in the tower later.
Interesting. What else do you have for us?
So the next up, we've got HMS Pinafore, which is glorious. And there's a lot of people that feel that Gilbert and Sullivan can be a little bit stuffy, perhaps a little bit old-fashioned.
GB News, the People's Channel.
All too often, people will be sitting at home watching a press conference live, and they'll hear loads of questions being asked, and they'll be thinking, that's not my question. That's not my concern.
We don't care whose feathers we ruffle. We ask the questions that you want answering.
You're all standing on the street protesting and want to have an open discussion.
My name's Patrick Christie's. I do a show for GB News in the UK.
Is it possible to talk to you quickly?
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, this is the best view ever of Whitehall, looking out across all the tractor drivers of England who've come together to make their point.
Hello, so as you can see, I'm here in Westminster as the protest begins.
Yes, I'm very much in the thick of it.
Look, we're challenging narratives here at GBNews, and that's what sets us apart.
It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 5th of February, live across the UK, Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, is it all over for Sir Keir Starmer?
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear.
Yes, it did.
Today, the Prime Minister is fighting for his future. So the government is forced to go public with what it knows about his relationship with Lord Mandelson. And who led the revolt? Angela Rayner, his fault.
Given the public disgust and the sickening behaviour of Peter Mandelson and the importance of transparency, should we not have the ISC not have the same role now in keeping public confidence in the process?
Well, the Prime Minister is fighting back today. Sir Keir Starmer hopes to move on from the scandal and will set out his plan to revamp Britain's most deprived communities.
And illegal working exposed. Delivery drivers, barbers, nail bars are a hotbed for illegal workers. We could have told the government that, but we'll be breaking down the figures.
And Sandringham strike. Staff at the Sandringham estate are told that they can reject working for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as his new home.
And these are live pictures of J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, arriving in Milan for the start of the Winter Olympics.
When I wrote that tweet, I was just so emotionally charged and upset.
Was Lucy Connolly scapegoated? Well, the childminder had her prosecution for stirring up racial hatred during the Southport riots fast-tracked by the Attorney General, Lord Hermer.
For a decade, the British police have harassed me for expressing views that the majority of the public share.
That's the father, Ted creator Graham Linehan, telling the US Congress about Britain sanctioning people over free speech violations. He spoke to our very own Bev Turner on Late Show Live.
The fact that the British government are ignoring the Supreme Court ruling, which is such a dangerous thing, because if the government ignores the law, then why should anyone follow it?
And we'll be looking at the future of Reform UK. Nigel Farage's senior advisor, James Orr, will be joining us to discuss where the party is headed and will they ever unite with the Tories.
Cancer touches so many lives, not only patients, but the families and friends and caregivers who walk beside them.
And new personal footage of the Princess of Wales sharing personal video messages to mark World Cancer Day today, telling those affected by the disease, please know you're not alone. The headlines are uniformly bleak for the Prime Minister. He is out today. He's trying to get people back onto his agenda. His attempts to revive the high street. He's announcing an extra £800 million, which, as you know, is small beer, really, to revive the high street. But he's taking questions from the press. We will be there. People are going to be asking him about Mandelson, his judgment, and what questions were asked about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein before he got that ambassador's job.
Absolutely, and questions will be asked about Morgan McSweeney, the number 10 top advisor, who is much closer to Mandelson, I think, than Starmer ever was.
Yes.
But Starmer has to get on with the job of governing, and you can just imagine how number 10 is just full of all this fallout from yesterday and the weeks before. But he's still a Prime Minister. He still has to get on with the job.
I know.
It must be impossible to do that.
Do you
now.
remember when they came back after the New Year break? They were having a reset.
Another one, yeah.
Another one. How's the reset going, Prime Minister? We're here at GB News if you want to tell us. And as ever, though, of course, we want to know what you think and send your views and post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's your 60-second news update with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. 9:30, the headlines this hour. The chair of Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee is demanding maximum transparency as files are released on Peter Mandelson's US ambassador role. Downing Street dropped plans last night to control the release after a Labour revolt. It follows Sir Keir Starmer's admission he knew Mandelson remained friends with Mr Epstein. Mandelson has now quit the House of Lords and faces a criminal investigation. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer is today warning the devastating decline of Britain's communities could threaten national security. In a speech later, the Prime Minister will announce £800 million to revive high streets, arguing strong, connected communities are vital in an unstable world. 40 areas will receive £20 million each. Newly released emails appearing to be from Ghislaine Maxwell appear to contradict Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's claim that a photo with Virginia Giuffre was fake. The messages appear to confirm how the image was taken. Giuffre's family says the files vindicate her. Andrew, though, denies all allegations. In other news, Russia says progress is being made in US-brokered peace talks on Ukraine, now entering a second day in Abu Dhabi. Vladimir Putin's envoy spoke of positive movement, but the US accuses Moscow of choosing terror over diplomacy. And here, the government is launching a world-first deepfake detection system with tech firms including Microsoft. The safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, warns deepfakes do not discriminate after investigations into social media platform X over sexual deepfakes, including of children. Those are the headlines for now. A full roundup of all the top stories at 10.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
There used to be a rule of Alistair Campbell when he was Tony Blair's right-hand man, spin doctor. If a story was on the front pages a third or fourth day, that was the end of the minister who was in the firing line. The story about Peter Mandelson has dominated the agenda all week and will continue to do so. So is it the end of the road for the Prime Minister who took that decision to make him ambassador to the United States, knowing, because it was in the public domain, that he had continued a friendship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction and had stayed in his home while he was in prison.
Yeah, in 2009, that's right. Well, this was the damning moment at Prime Minister's Question Time yesterday.
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Yes, it did.
So after Prime Minister's Question Time yesterday, there was what's called the Opposition Day debate, where Kemi Badenoch gets to choose what's debated. And obviously they chose to debate whether or not the documents should be released about whether or not Peter Mandelson was properly vetted. But initially, the government put down an amendment to say that number 10 should choose which of these documents to release because of national security. But the Tories said that it's this independent security committee that should decide. And in the end, Prime Minister had to give in because Angela Rayner came back from her lunch break. And with Meg Hillier, they organised a rebellion. And so the Prime Minister now has to reveal these documents. But it's going to be months, Andrew, because the police have to investigate first. So does he have a bit of a breathing space now?
He does, but I think his breathing space lasts until a by-election, which we've got in 3 weeks' time. And if that goes badly, who knows, the pressure will be on. But, of course, the key about Peter Mandelson, which is still causing shockwaves in the political establishment and beyond. There's a YouGov poll today saying 95% of people know all about Mandelson and the fact this man was giving away cabinet secrets to his chum, the financier and paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And he was giving secrets away when he was serving in Gordon Brown's cabinet, having been brought back from the EU, where he was a trade commissioner, to act as his trade secretary. He was so important to Gordon Brown, he then promoted him to first secretary or first minister. He was effectively the deputy prime minister. One person who was in that cabinet was Sean Woodward, who was the Northern Ireland secretary and was very close, I know, to Gordon Brown. And I'm delighted to say he joins us now. Mr. Woodward, good morning.
Good morning.
You served in a cabinet with a man, Peter Mandelson, who you've known for very many years. Are you worried that some of the conversations you may have had in Cabinet and in Cabinet committees and in private meetings with Mandelson were leaked to Jeffrey Epstein?
I think we'd be reading about them if they were, because it seems that Peter was incapable of not putting everything down on paper and sending it the next minute to Jeffrey Epstein in New York. So I suspect, Andrew, anything I might have said or discussed in Cabinet, if you haven't already read about it, probably it wasn't shared with Jeffrey Epstein.
Now, Sean, of course, at the moment, people are focusing on all the negative aspects of Peter Mandelson. They're saying it was far too risky to appoint him as the ambassador to Washington, that the Prime Minister should have known all the sackings before. But clearly the Prime Minister, Morgan McSweeney, thought there was something special about Peter Mandelson that meant that he was the man for the job. What are those particular characteristics that meant that he has stayed in such a high position for such a long time?
Well, there's a massive difference between the decision that was made inside Number 10 by those around Keir Starmer to recommend that Peter was a safe appointment for 2025 to Washington, and the decision of Gordon Brown in 2008 to bring Peter Mandelson back from the European Union as commissioner and come into the cabinet. Peter, in 2008, he had been fired twice by Tony Blair, but some years had passed. He'd been in Europe as the Trade Commissioner, very successfully so, and much admired in the European Union. And Gordon's decision was about bringing discipline to the cabinet. And I think at the time, everybody thought that it was a very good decision. It would become apparent over the next 2 years that there were some major issues around Peter's judgment. I certainly fell out with him over the Chilcot inquiry. But we didn't know then what we do now, or indeed what was known about Epstein then, that we did in 2025. And I think what that really raises are some big questions around the people who've been advising this Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And I think, Peter Mandelson unquestionably let the Prime Minister down. And from what the Prime Minister has said, he lied to the Prime Minister. But there were judgments made by people around Keir Starmer about Peter Mandelson, about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. And for me, as a former Northern Ireland Secretary and used to how deep vetting is, I cannot understand why more questions don't seem to have been asked about the scale and depth of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, and therefore questions of his judgment, because these emails aren't just one or two. They're extensive and deep, and I think it would have been impossible if you'd asked Peter Mandelson and people who knew Jeffrey Epstein or knew Peter Mandelson that the deep vetting process, if it's done as it's normally done, wouldn't have uncovered those and wouldn't basically have said to Number 10, this is not a safe appointment.
You're being very careful in your words here, Mr. Woodward. You're saying people around him. Do you mean the Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who we know is a long-standing supporter of Peter Mandelson? Some people have said Peter Mandelson was Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff's political mentor. He was the one we know behind the scenes was pushing for Mandelson.
Well, at the moment, the Prime Minister is saying he has confidence in Morgan McSweeney, and that may be because Morgan McSweeney wasn't responsible for compiling the folder that went on the Prime Minister's desk when it came to the time of making this choice. It's pretty impossible to conceive that it wouldn't have involved the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. It's possible, though, Andrew, that he might have said, look, I'm too close to Peter Mandelson. I should resile myself from this decision. And, of course, that can happen. And we don't know that it didn't happen. And I think one of the things I feel about this story is it's very important to focus on what we do know or try to find out what we don't know, rather than assuming that because we don't know it, that followed. Because there's enough, frankly, for the police investigation now and misconduct in public office to focus on those things, and I'm very keen that we do that. Now, I'm not letting those in Number 10 off the hook here, because the Prime Minister needs to be confident that he has the best people with the best judgment around him, and there do seem to be some pretty big questions around those around the Prime Minister right now.
Couldn't we actually make that more simple, Mr. Woodward, and say, ultimately, the decision rested with at the top, the Prime Minister. He made that call. It was his call. He was no friend of Peter Mandelson. As we know, they've never been especially close. So he took that decision. Doesn't the buck stop with him?
Well, we've got to again know what the Prime Minister knew before we reach that conclusion. I mean, do I think that this is enough to cause the Prime Minister to consider his position? It could be, but I don't think it is, as we understand the facts at the moment. There are no questions in my mind that somebody has to take responsibility for this. My judgment is it's not the Prime Minister as the facts look at the moment. He was given advice. The person who gave him that advice is the person, I think, right now, if you like, in the firing line. And they're in the firing line for this reason. Their judgment is what every day determines what is on the Prime Minister's desk and what the Prime Minister has to decide on. He has to feel confident that those decisions coming to him are the right ones. It's his agenda, if you like, for governing. And that's really where I think this is at. And you mentioned earlier on about the turmoil that the Prime Minister is in. Look, you've been around, Andrew, for a long time, as I've been. If we think about the numbers of days that Tony Blair was the headlines, it was many, many days, not just 2 or 3. Alistair Campbell's comment about if a minister is the headlines day after day, that's very different from the Prime Minister being the headlines day after day. Mrs. Thatcher, ask Tony Blair, ask Gordon Brown, dare I say it, ask Boris Johnson. Prime Ministers can be the headline every day, but there comes a moment, Boris Johnson and COVID, Mrs. Thatcher and poll tax, when you can't hold on. I don't think Keir Starmer is there. But if anybody inside number 10 is telling the Prime Minister it's wonderful weather outside the front door of number 10 and you're all fine, Prime Minister, then that would be seriously injudicious decision-making inside number 10.
All right, Sir Sean Woodward. Sean Woodward, not Sir Sean, not perhaps you are. Perhaps you seem to be Sir
Very
Sean
kind,
Woodward.
But thank you.
Sean Woodward, who was
knighted by GBNews.
Yeah, he was a member of Gordon Brown's cabinet and sat opposite Peter Mandelson, and I know he had a spectacular fallout with Mandelson over whether the Chilcot report should be held in public.
Well, I thought he made some very fair-minded comments.
Yes, he did.
I just want to read out a tweet by Freddie Sayers, who's the editor of the Unheard magazine. He's just written, campaign to oust Starmer is very reminiscent of the campaign to oust Boris. It would be similarly catastrophic for his party. If Labour do it, they should expect equivalent results.
Yeah, well, that's quite right. Quite right.
It may still happen, though.
Don't forget, of course, the Prime Minister will be out on the road later today. We will be with him. He wants to talk. He wants to get back into. He wants to get back onto his agenda about his plans to revive the High Street. His government having done so much damage to the High Street, and of course, we've also got Nigel Farage going to rally Reform supporters in Wales. We'll be there for that too.
But up next, can you guess what links takeaways, nail salons and delivery riders? I expect you can. But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for our top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's more very heavy rain to come across parts of Spain and Portugal and North Morocco as we head into the weekend. Strong winds continue to be an issue here as well. A bit breezy in the Canaries, but plenty of sunshine here. Things turning a bit brighter in Catalonia, but there's that next zone of wet weather coming into Spain and Portugal. Showery for Italy and some heavy showers for Croatia and the mainland of Greece as well. Generally dry in Cyprus with some hazy sunshine here. The Canaries remain the place to be for dry, sunny weather this weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I take it as a huge compliment that people remember it. I mean, let's be honest. How many times do people actually remember something you have done on television? And people remember that. But I take it as a huge compliment because let's face it, Morecambe and Wise were loved. They are probably two of the greatest comics that we have ever produced in this country. And their legacy is that even, I think Eric died in 1984 when I was working in America. And so we're talking about, over 40 years ago. There are at least two generations of young people who now watch them on television, who laugh because they think they are funny. You know, they left us that legacy of what it is like to be a good comic. And I had the pleasure of working with them on that. How many people can say, well, you know, people will remember a particular thing you did in your career as a television broadcaster? And the fact that people did love them, I take as, you know, when people say to me, what was it like to work with Eric and Ern? They want to know, because I'm that vicarious link with them still, because there aren't too many people around still that can say they did work with them. So I mean, yes, of course, I've got, you know, in 60 years of working in television, there are lots of other things that I've done, but I'm always, and that people remember me for reading the news. They remember us for all sorts of things, and it's a compliment always.
And you read in the news, that all comes together, starts in the 1970s, which to me was the greatest time in broadcasting. I think it started to dip off slightly after that. The 70s, I think, they were
your heyday.
I just think everything, and I think it had a lot to do with what was attainable to us as viewers, which was very little. We lived in a world that was divorced from the world of TV, and it was magical.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's 9 minutes to 10. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So, new official records, no surprise here, show illegal migrants flocking to Britain to work as, guess what, barbers, are they Turkish by any chance, delivery drivers and in nail bars.
Well, this comes as illegal working raids, arrests and removals hit their highest levels on record last year.
We're going to talk now to the former Tory MP and Immigration Minister Tom Pursglove. So Labour have struck lucky here, Tom. They've discovered that these places are full of illegal migrants and they're sorting it all out. Why don't you all lot do that?
Well, I would say yes and no to that.
Right.
So they are benefiting from various powers that I legislated for through the Nationality and Borders Act, you know, particularly around civil penalties, which they voted against, but it's welcome the fact that they now have seen the light and they're using those powers and using them to make a difference. And, of course, I'm not going to argue, and you're not going to argue, and Miriam, you're not going to argue with ministers being tough on immigration enforcement and trying to root out these operations. But actually, you've also got to look at this in context, because how many of those people who are discovered are actually being removed at the end of the process? And previous figures have been quite small in terms of that headline figure versus who's actually removed at the end of the process. But also, unless you deal with the upstream problem, the number of people coming in the first place, there is always going to be a market. And so this is a bit of a Pyrrhic victory in the sense that, yes, enforcement work is welcome. There will always be a place for that. But you're always going to have a large number of people available to be discovered through these raids if you continue to have the crossings of the Channel in the first place.
But, Tom, even if those Channel crossings were stopped today and never restarted, I'm sure viewers at home would be thrilled with that, but even if you did that, we've still got 100,000, 200,000, maybe more people working in the illegal economy that have to be dealt with. So surely the answer is actually to step up the raids like this, do more of them and prosecute not just the illegal migrants, but also the employers, because then there is a deterrent against employing people who don't have the right to work.
Definitely right, and that's why we beefed up the powers in order to be able to help do that and to bring those responsible to justice and to make sure that they, you know, felt the full force of the law in a stronger sense. So there's a role for that, really important. But you've also got to take a tough line. For example, on those small boat crossings, if you arrive in a small boat, my view is you should be detained and removed, either to your home country or to a third country like Rwanda was intended to do. And if you're a visa overstayer, I equally think you should be removed. We should have no messing around. You should be banned from coming back to this country. And that's just the quid pro quo that I think the British people expect now, and we should change the law and we should deal with the ECHR to help make that happen.
And if you have or had a visa, then by definition, the authorities must know your country of origin.
Exactly.
Everywhere, I mean, I'm just saying anecdotally, near where I live in North London, there are 3 nail bars in a 200-yard radius of each other. It's so obvious what's going on there. And it's almost like they're cocking a snook at the establishment. They only take cash, and a lot of them can't speak any English.
Yeah, it's terrible. And many of these incidences where these raids happen come about from members of the public coming forward, providing concerns and intelligence leads to the Home Office that they then pursue. One of the other challenges that strains the bandwidth of being able to do that work is immigration enforcement officers being peeled off of those duties in order to go and deal with arrivals at the Channel or within other parts of the system where the pressure points come. So again, it shows why it's just so important that in order to be able to do those raids and to be able to go at that full throttle, you've really got to address this issue in a holistic way, tackling all the different challenges and all the different problems that are feeding it. At the minute, though, the government strategy is very one-dimensional and just focuses on enforcement, doesn't do enough in terms of trying to stop the problem at source.
If the Conservatives win the next election, they've said that they will deport 100,000 people a year. Reform have made a similar promise. Do you think that's possible? Do you think it will face the same kind of opposition that the ICE raids have in the US?
I think it will certainly attract people on the left to be very anti and very sort of forthright in trying to thwart that. And we've seen quite a lot of activism in terms of the judiciary and the sort of lefty lawyers and all the rest of it that we've heard about before.
How do you stop the human rights lawyers unless you get out of the ECHR pretty quickly?
And that's why I think that's such an important step. So it's great that on the right there is real clarity now about the fact that we've got to take that step of dealing with the ECHR once and for all, which then gives you the ability to be able to push those cases through the pipe and get people removed at the other end. And I think public opinion on this has moved so enormously in the country in terms of just the sort of tolerance. I remember when we announced Rwanda, there was a lot of opposition to it. A lot of people said it was cruel. A lot of people thought that it was undue and not necessary. I think it was probably ahead of its time. And actually, I'd argue now that is very much the baseline of where public opinion's at.
Yeah, I think you're right. First thing, of course, the Labour government did was scrap it, of course. And now the Rwandan government's suing the British state for 50, 60 million pounds.
Up to 100 million today, according to one of the papers.
Couldn't make it up,
absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom Pursglove, for joining us this morning. Well, plenty more to come. We're heading over to Wales, where Reform UK leader Nigel Farage is taking centre stage in Newport. Don't miss that.
This is Britain's Newsroom, Britain's favourite morning show on GB News and favourite radio show too.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. High winds are making crossings tricky on the A9000 Forth Road Bridge, so take extra care. In Nottinghamshire, congestion on the A52 westbound between the A46 and the A6011 is causing around 15 minutes of delay. On the M25 clockwise between junction 15 and junction 16, allow about 30 minutes extra. In Staffordshire, the M6 northbound exit slip at junction 11 is slow with 10-minute queues. And on the trains, Great Western Railway has disruption on some routes, and London Overground is disrupted through Barking. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
We want you to set off on the destination of your dreams this year, as you could win an incredible holiday for two worth £10,000. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, you'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. We'll also give you £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure you really make a splash this summer.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 2.25. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Thursday the 5th of February. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Case.
Is it all over for the Prime Minister?
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear.
Yes, it did.
Well, today the Prime Minister is fighting for his political future as the government is forced to go public with what it knows about his relationship with Lord Mandelson. Angela Ray.
Given the public disgust and the sickening behaviour of Peter Mandelson and the importance of transparency, should we not have the ISC not have the same role now in keeping public confidence in the process?
But today he's fighting back. The Prime Minister is trying to move on from the scandal. He's going to set out the government's plan to revamp some of Britain's most deprived communities. We'll be with him, but I suspect most of the questions will be about Mandelson.
Well, more illegal working has been exposed. Delivery drivers, barbers and nail technicians are a hotbed for illegal workers, and we'll be breaking down the figures.
Sandringham strike. Staff at the Sandringham estate are told they don't have to work for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor at his new home if they don't like the idea of it, and apparently a lot of them don't.
When I wrote that tweet, I was just so emotionally charged and upset.
Was Lucy Connolly scapegoated? The childminder had her prosecution for stirring up racial hatred during the Southport riots fast-tracked for approval by the Attorney General, Lord Hermer.
For a decade, the British police have harassed me for expressing views that the majority of the public share.
That's the Father Ted creator Graham Linehan talking to the US Congress about Britain and free speech violations. He then spoke to our very own Bev Turner on Late Show Live.
The fact that the British government are ignoring the Supreme Court ruling, which is such a dangerous thing, because if the government ignores the law, then why should anyone follow it?
Well, the future of Reform UK, Nigel Farage's senior advisor James Orr will be joining us to discuss where the party is headed and will they ever unite with the Tories.
There's been an interesting documentary which the BBC have done, talking to Reform. Are they ready for government? In which Nigel Farage says, we're halfway there. Admitting they're not ready yet, but then there's no election yet, because a lot of people think, oh, it's so bad, we need a general election now. They've got a majority of 170. There is no prospect for an election, in my view, before 2028.
And also, as much as some people are disappointed with the government now, do you really want an election when the other parties aren't ready to field candidates? They're not ready with potential legislation. It's too early for everybody, really, especially for Keir Starmer.
Absolutely. So,
I think he'll hang on till May. That's my guess.
Yeah, interesting.
And then who knows?
As ever, we want to know what you think, so why don't you send your views and post your comments by visiting
gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. Just after 10 o'clock, the top story this morning. The chair of Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee is demanding maximum transparency as the government prepares to release files on Peter Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador. Downing Street has now dropped plans to control their release after a Labour revolt last night. It comes too after Sir Keir Starmer admitted he did know Mandelson had stayed friends with Jeffrey Epstein even after his conviction. Well, Mandelson has now quit the House of Lords and faces a criminal investigation, with some Labour MPs calling the situation sickening. But this morning, Housing Secretary Steve Reid told us he thinks the Prime Minister has acted with decisiveness and integrity.
I don't justify Mandelson's appointment for one moment. Clearly, it was the wrong thing to do. But he had been the EU Trade Commissioner. He had been the British Secretary of State for Business. And we needed somebody that could go and negotiate a trade deal with the Trump administration that had just come into power. So obviously, it should never have happened. But there was a rationale, and the vetting process did not throw up the concerns that we now know to be the case. So he should not have been appointed, is the truth of it. But he lied. As soon as those lies were exposed, he was sacked.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer is today warning that the devastating decline of Britain's communities could, he says, threaten national security. In a speech later, the Prime Minister will announce £800 million to revive British high streets and argue that strong, connected communities are vital in an unstable world. 40 areas across the country will each receive £20 million. Well, this morning we have heard from health officials reporting that 36 children across the UK have developed symptoms consistent with toxin poisoning after consuming recalled baby formula. The UK's Health Security Agency says reports have been logged in England, Scotland, Wales and in Northern Ireland linked to products containing the cereulide toxin. Earlier this month, the Food Standards Agency confirmed Nestlé had recalled several batches of SMA infant and follow-on formula. Last week, Danone also recalled a batch of Aptamil first infant formula. Parents are now being urged to check batch numbers carefully and not use any affected products. Newly released emails understood to be from Ghislaine Maxwell appear to contradict Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's claim that a photograph of him with Virginia Giuffre was not genuine. The email, included in files released by the US Justice Department, seems to confirm the circumstances in which that image was taken. Giuffre's family says the documents vindicate her. Andrew, though, denies all allegations and has previously settled a civil case without admitting liability. Here, the government has announced £74 million for clean energy upgrades across public services, including more than 80 NHS trusts, 8 military sites and a prison. Ministers say the funding will pay for solar panels, heat pumps and battery storage to cut bills and to free up money for frontline care. Hospitals, RAF bases and HMP Channings Wood are among those set to benefit, with savings expected to be reinvested locally. Russia says that progress is being made in US-brokered peace talks on Ukraine, now entering its second day in Abu Dhabi. President Vladimir Putin's envoy spoke of a positive moment and positive movement too, while Ukraine's negotiator confirmed continued trilateral talks. The United States is warning hopes of progress are being undermined and accused Moscow of choosing terror over diplomacy after alleged cyber attacks on Ukraine's energy networks. And the UK government has launched a world-first deepfake detection initiative working with tech firms including Microsoft to help identify and assess fake images and videos online. Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips says deepfakes do not discriminate and warned millions are being targeted without consent. The move follows investigations into the social media platform X after its chatbot Grok was used to generate sexual deepfakes, including of children. Those are the headlines for now. More in around half an hour's time. Now, though, it's over to Britain's Newsroom.
Hello, welcome. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
And we're going to go live to Wales, where the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, is in Newport. He's speaking ahead of those key elections to the Welsh Senate in May.
Than the Profumo scandal of 60 years ago, this is the biggest scandal in British politics for over 1 century. And I would predict pretty confidently, I said this yesterday, but I stick by it, I'd predict that Morgan McSweeney the chief advisor will be gone pretty quickly. I don't know how long Starmer will last as Prime Minister. Indeed, I'm very worried about it. I want him to stay forever. Well, forever, I mean until May the 7th, when we have the elections in Wales, Scotland, London and around the rest of the country. That's what I'd like to see. Well, if he does last up until May the 7th, our job, your job, as our candidates, our activists, our supporters, our donors, your job in the run-up to May the 7th is to make sure he isn't there for very much longer after that. And Wales, of course, in Wales the Labour Party were already in dire trouble. I can't even imagine what some of the last loyal Labour voters must be thinking in the wake of these misjudgments and this scandal. And it is all the more remarkable because, of course, South Wales really is the birthplace of the Labour Party. From Keir Hardie in Merthyr Tydfil through the Nye Bevans, the Michael Foots, the Neil Kinnocks, many of the great names of the Labour Party have been South Walians. And most of these constituencies have been taken for granted pretty much since 1918. But something fundamental has changed. And now I think for Labour it will get even worse. And that gives us incredible opportunities. The Tories are nowhere in Wales in this contest leading up to May the 7th. And frankly, as soon as there's a big political scandal, and this is a mega political scandal, people don't think, oh, well, that's okay, because the Tories were whiter than white. No one thinks that of them. So the opportunity for something fresh and something new has never, ever been greater. And that's the role that Plaid are trying to fill. Plaid are trying to say, number one, we're not the Labour Party. Well, that bit's true. Although in policy terms, you'll notice they've kept the government in Cardiff propped up many, many times over the course of the last miserable 26 years for Wales. They've even had their policy advisers deep inside the Welsh government. So we can't let Plaid get away with saying they're the party of change. They are not the party of change. They're the party of continuity. They're the party of continued failure in Wales, whether it's health, education, or some of the loony policies, such as the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which I can promise you will be disappearing if and when we win these elections on the 7th of May. Now, there's so much else to talk about, but for us to succeed, there are 4 key ingredients. The first is we need the right candidates and the right leadership. The second is we need the right policies and the right manifesto for Wales. Don't worry, getting rid of the 20-mile-an-hour limit will be in it, I'll insist. But so much else to talk about in terms of farming, in terms of health, in terms of education, and in terms of the bloated, expanded quangocracy who seem to run most of Wales these days. So that's the second thing we've got to get right. We've got to get the policy formation, we've got to get the means of selling it out to people in ways that are understandable and communicable. The third thing we have to do is to raise money, because you need ammunition to fight these big battles. And the fourth thing we need is to be lucky with our enemies. And I think right at the moment, we're very, very lucky with our enemies. And I can tell you today, on the national fundraising front, we will very soon see the declarations for Q4 of 2025, and that will show a very big uptick in the sheer number of people starting to give us serious money, and lots of people giving us money at smaller levels too. And I think when the Q1 figures come out, people will be surprised. So we're lucky with our opponents. We're raising the money to have the ammunition. We will be doing a full manifesto launch within the first 2 weeks of March, where we'll lay out the manifesto with which we'll fight the Senate elections. But today is about people. Now, it'll be another couple of weeks before we unveil the lists for the 16 super constituencies. But I want to introduce today two people who are new to the party, who I believe will add a great amount, and I'm keen for you to meet. The first is a 34-year-old sheep farmer. You've guessed who he is, haven't you? He's a 34-year-old sheep farmer who was elected to the Senate as a Conservative, and 2 weeks ago they were on defection watch, which, given what's been happening around the country, is perhaps not all that surprising. And he was called in and asked, "Are you leaving us to join Reform?" He just honestly said, "Look, I've had a conversation with him and they booted him out." Well, today we're going to welcome James Evans into our party. We're going to welcome him in to stand as a candidate. And before I bring him on stage, have a look at this short video.
After 26 years of Wales being let down by the same failing political parties, Wales now needs fundamental reform. Growing up in rural Wales, you feel like you've won the lottery.
Well, that's Nigel Farage launching the Welsh Senate elections campaign over in Wales, and a defection, James Evans, from the Conservatives.
Yeah, he was part of the Welsh Assembly for the Tories. I think that, if my memory serves me, the Tories kicked him out because they knew he was going to defect.
Okay.
So they did a Robert Jenrick on him. He's not in the Jenrick stat calibre, actually, but in Wales it will be good headlines for Farage's
And he's a
reform.
sheep farmer, somebody
Yeah.
from an ordinary Welsh background,
Exactly.
so it could be an asset for reform.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to the main political stories of the day, and we're now joined by Simon Nash, who is a political commentator. Simon, good morning. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. Launch of the Senate elections. Labour expected to lose a lot of seats, of course. Do you think there'll be a new two-party rule after the election, Reform and Plaid Cymru?
Well, it does seem like that. I don't think Plaid Cymru is going to do particularly well. I mean, does anyone really want Welsh nationalism? They've done very well being part of the UK, and I don't think Plaid Cymru are going to do very well at all. I think Labour should do quite well. Keir Starmer has a great vision for the UK. He's building Great British Railways.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
I think. Talking seriously?
Yeah.
You know what's happening in Wales? They're in absolute revolt over the Labour Party. The leader is I mean, the polls are suggesting that Labour could be in third place.
Well, the Conservatives as well, which says a lot, and Reform have had a lot of great publicity.
No, I know you're here to be loyal, but come on, be realistic. They are facing an existential crisis in Wales. They couldn't even win the Caerphilly by-election. They nearly lost the Caerphilly by-election.
Well, by-elections are tricky, aren't they? Because lots of parties put all their energy into it, and Labour probably didn't, on the basis, well, Reform are going to put all of their activists on the streets. And this is, I think that... people will actually see what's going on. I think Keir Starmer's dropped this absurd digital ID thing. He's putting a lot of money into nuclear and renewable energy, and I think that that's going to really help. He's gone back on the pub tax issue, and that's going to help lots of the small pubs in Wales, and Wales is a thriving place for pubs. And if people actually listen to that, I think they would say, well, they're probably going to vote Labour. And, I mean, what's a Reform UK offering? A sheep farmer?
Yeah, but I'm just looking at the Caerphilly by-election. They won, Plaid, who you've written off, won with nearly half the vote. Labour's vote was down 35%.
Well, that's true. But
and what's changed since then? Well, it's got worse for Keir Starmer on the national stage, and he's now embroiled in this enormous scandal about Peter Mandelson, which is his own making, because he made him ambassador despite all sorts of warnings about this man's past associations with Epstein.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's not a good look. I mean, on the Epstein issue...
Not a good look is the understatement here.
Well, Government ministers involved in embassies and exports, I mean, they deal with all kind of unsavoury characters, don't they? Did Peter Mandelson really know Epstein's crimes at the time?
Yes, he did.
Well, did he know exactly
He was staying in his house when he was in prison.
Yeah, but, I mean,
He was staying in his house when he was in prison for trafficking teenage girls.
Well, did he know that that was the offence?
Yes, he did.
Did he absolutely know that? How do we know?
He was in prison for child prostitution.
Yeah. Even worse.
For a couple of years.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was the scratching the surface of his crimes, as it turned out, but that was what he was in prison for.
And he was a cabinet minister. It wouldn't be difficult to find out why his mate was in prison, because he was contacting him while he was in prison. And don't forget, he said, I weep for you. I think it's a... don't appeal the sentence, appeal to get a shot. He knew all about it.
Well, did he? Because he could have... Epstein could have lied and just said, oh, well, the age of consent in America is 18. It could have been a 17-year-old, and he could have lied to Peter Mandelson.
Can use the internet.
Do we all DBS check our friends?
I don't want you to dig yourself into a hole that you're never going to get out of. OK, let's get back to the facts. So the reason that Keir Starmer is in trouble is because he appeared to admit in Prime Minister's Question Time yesterday that he did know about Peter Mandelson's ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But actually, Number 10 clarified after the event and said what he meant was he knew everything that was in the public domain, which that there was an ongoing relationship that was reported by the FT in 2023. Nevertheless, whatever the facts of the matter, he is now fighting for his political life because he appears to have lost the confidence of his backbenchers. Can he hold on, especially with Angela Rayner now on the ascendant again?
Well, I think Keir Starmer can hold on. On the Mandelson issue, I think that he was friends with Epstein as a means to an end for British exports. He's very well connected, knowing Bill Gates, knowing industry figures. I mean, even Prince Andrew was emailing him to try and get investment for British companies. I'm not saying this negates his awful crimes.
He was leaking market-sensitive information to
Well, that's true, and that was absolutely wrong. I don't think Keir Starmer knew that at the time, and that was Peter Mandelson being selfish, promoting his self-interest rather than the national interest. I think Keir Starmer thought, well, Epstein's a dodgy character, but potentially good for the UK, just as we're friends with the dictators of the world for oil and...
paedophile.
Absolutely. What about the kings and the dictators of Arab oil countries who are doing the president of China? I mean, what crimes is he up to against human rights?
The problem that the Labour Party has got is that it spent all of the last Parliament saying that the Tories were corrupt, taking any allegation that they could find about Boris Johnson or any Tory MP, quite frankly, and saying this is an example of Tory sleaze. Now they're finding themselves in exactly the same mess.
Well, that's true, but you'll probably also remember there was probably press release after press release saying, right, call the Conservatives a psychodrama of rotating leaders. And I think if you keep changing leader, I mean, again, who would replace Keir Starmer? It would be someone else, and then they would then get cancelled, and then you'd end up with this weak leadership of constant rotation. I think Keir Starmer should apologise for the Mandelson affair and keep focusing on his vision, Great British Railways, getting these new train lines built, renewable energy, nuclear, helping care home kids, helping the NHS. The NHS is now doing much better than it was, and these are all great achievements, and it's a vision for Britain, which I think Keir Starmer is now selling, rather than just fumbling around with these absurd ideas of digital IDs. He's actually changed his direction in the last 3 weeks, and that's going to benefit him.
Well, Simon, you should be in line for at least a knighthood with your...
Stoic
determination to defend
Someone's got to defend them, I
Well
suppose.
done. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. Simon Nash, great to see you.
Yeah, now time for our Great British Giveaway. It's your chance to get your summer sorted with a luxury 10,000 holiday for two, plus £30,000 in tax-free cash. Here's how you can win it.
This year, the adventure of a lifetime could be on us. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for two to be won. You could be here exploring the magic of Egypt on a Nile River cruise, or choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, New Zealand, or even Sri Lanka. And because they have over 40 years' experience with handcrafted tours, you'll be safe in the knowledge that every step of the journey will be planned with you in mind. We'll also boost your bank account with a fabulous £30,000 in tax-free cash, which you'll be able to spend however you like this year. So what are you waiting for?
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. The winner may be contacted live after all entry routes are closed. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, we're joined now, probably here already, by Carol Mullane, the journalist and broadcaster, and political commentator Andy Williams in the studio.
Welcome back, Andy. You've been in a nice part of the world, haven't you?
I've been in Australia, yeah, for my honeymoon. It was
very nice. How romantic.
A wonderful time.
Very
Lots
good.
of sunshine.
Yeah, you look quite. You look annoyingly well.
Very tan.
Well, probably not for long.
Now, Andy, we often describe you as a man of the left.
Yeah, a man of the centre-left.
Since you've been away, quite a lot's gone wrong
Has
for
it?
Keir
I haven't
Starmer.
noticed. What's going on? You tell me.
Sorry to break it to you.
OK. Look, I mean, so Anthony Seldon, who is the great sort of biographer of prime ministers, the expert on prime ministers, he says that there are three things fundamentally that you need to be a successful prime minister. You have to get the people right. We'll come back to that. You have to set clear strategic priorities and you have to act the part. And I think we're seeing now that he's failing on all three levels. And on the Mandelson point, you know, yes, he was lied to, and that's the government's line this morning is, you know, Mandelson lied to the government's face, to the Prime Minister's face, and he did. He absolutely lied about the extent of the relationship, and nobody could have predicted that, for example, he'd have been leaking from cabinet meetings 15 years ago, which is disgraceful and, you know, may end up, well, will end up in criminal proceedings at least.
But you don't give a plum job in Washington to a man who you don't need to vet, who has been sacked by 3 governments, who actually has... There's always been a smell of bentness and treachery around this guy. You don't need to vet someone like that who has done what Mandelson has done, the loan from Robinson, the Hinduja brothers, you know, they're partying with Deripaska. You don't need to vet a man like that.
No, I think that's... And that's the problem is that ultimately, as Prime Minister, your job is to get the big calls right and to make good, sound judgments. And you'll get it wrong sometimes, but what we've seen time and time again with Starmer, more often than not, he's getting it wrong. And this was just... The honest truth of it is that he looked at Mandelson, he knew that he had a relationship with Epstein, he knew about all of the backstory that you mentioned, Carol, and he concluded that it was a risk worth taking, and that risk has not only not paid off, but it's spectacularly backfired.
This is all again about Starmer's self-interest. He knows Mandelson is good with trade, and he knows that what Trump is like with tariffs, so he wanted to build a relationship, but he wanted Mandelson to facilitate a good relationship between them both, and did that. But you know what is making me laugh at the moment, and none of it's funny, but this is making me laugh out loud, was all the Labour MPs yesterday, particularly West Streeting, going out and having this shock horror, faux sense of betrayal. I thought Streeting was going to cry on television yesterday. So upset was he at the shock of discovering what a toad Mandelson is.
Well, and they're close, of course.
But of course, he was an acolyte of Mandelson's, and this is the stupid thing. And they're all pretending that they didn't know what he was. They all knew exactly what he was. And they're all trying to separate themselves from it now, when all of them have used his dark talents over the years to help further their own careers. I mean, Mandelson, whatever else he is, he's actually a brilliant strategist. He's a very good manipulator. He's a spin doctor supreme. And all of them, you know, from Blair to Brown to Starmer to lots of Labour MPs have used his talents, including Morgan McSweeney, who is Starmer's chief advisor.
And of course, Streeting, as you said, was an acolyte of Mandelson.
Yeah, I mean, there was this Sunday lunch club that met at Lord Liddell's house in South London every week to talk about how they were going to change the Labour Party, and credit where credit's due, they did that very successfully. One of the reasons I was so enthusiastic about voting for Labour at the last election is because it seemed that they had dispensed with the ghost of the hard left of the Labour Party and turned it into a party that could govern, and not just govern, but govern effectively. Unfortunately, that's not what we've seen.
Do we think that... I thought Badenoch was fantastic yesterday. She stood Starmer in the comments. I mean, he looked like he was deflating.
Did you notice as well his hands were shaking?
Yeah, well, he would. Well, there would be. I mean, he must know.
This is a man on the edge.
This is a man definitely on the edge. I never thought he would be got rid of before May. I thought nothing was going to topple him before May. But depending what comes out, because now Kemi has demanded the release of all the emails.
It will take weeks and weeks for those papers to come out.
Will it?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
you can be certain.
They can't release them until the police
have to go through
done their investigation first. So it's going to go quiet for some time.
That will give him a temporary reprieve almost.
It's all coalescing around May, isn't it? That moment, the morning of Friday, I think it's the 8th of May, the elections are on the 7th. You can just imagine that if those elections go as badly as we expect, that is when the Conservatives are going to come out in a really serious way. And we even saw yesterday with Angela Rayner leading that revolt. We had Lord Hutton on LBC last night saying it's basically game over. The cracks are more than appearing. They're there, and I think the dam's going to burst.
But don't we keep on saying this all the time? We keep on saying this has got to do for him. And nothing actually does do for him.
I think May will, those election results.
I'm hoping this will.
You have to remember, Melanie, only 18 months ago, this man led Labour to a landslide victory. How has it fallen apart so quickly?
This was the guy, he said he was going to clean up politics.
End of the chaos.
He was going to end the chaos, bring back standards into British politics. And look at a lot of the people he's had in government. You know, you've got Louise Haigh, Tulip Sadiq, you've got Rayner and the stamp duty. All these people who have transgressed. If, you know, Boris got kicked out for a bit of cake, all of these people...
Come on.
But do you think, though, that chaos is now a permanent feature of our politics because of the way that social media and WhatsApp has transformed the way we transmit information? I can't believe that in the past there weren't politicians up to all sorts. In fact, we know there were. But the point was it didn't make it into the public domain, and if it did, it was slow, and it was through newspapers which were distributed very
I think that's
slowly.
a really interesting point. It's not to excuse any of these emails, any of the stuff that's gone on, but absolutely, we now have a record of this stuff. And I think in real time. And I think people assume that because they're sending private correspondence on their private email server. Well, you know, and Matt, by the way, we know Mandelson was deliberately using a private email address, not his government email address, a private email address, because he thought no one will be able to find these ever. Well, guess what? They have. So I do think that is an aspect.
One of the things that really staggered me, Malone, was to read that sometimes within 2 minutes of an email coming into his inbox, he was sending it to Jeffrey Epstein. It was like he had two masters, the government and Jeffrey Epstein. And how much was he being paid? Was he getting kickbacks?
With the information that he leaked to Epstein was likely to make a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Market-sensitive information about the Euro bailout, about all sorts of stuff. So Epstein was due to make a lot of money. Don't tell me Mandelson didn't get anything out of that, because what is in it for him if he doesn't get something back from
Well, of course, and there is
in
the £55,000 that was paid into his account, which he can't remember.
There was also his husband
got lots
paid
of thousands.
$4,000
a month, I know.
What's that about?
And we don't know, but I suspect it's less about direct kickbacks, but more about indirect future benefits and favours. And what I mean by that is Epstein was so well connected in US and global finance. You know, Mandelson was looking for jobs with the likes of Deutsche Bank, with Citi, with JP Morgan, with the big global banks. It can't have hurt for Epstein at the time to have greased the wheels.
And of course, it wouldn't have hurt with Mandelson being on Capitol Hill and hearing everything he was going to be hearing then. What could he have got? This is the other thing that Starmer is. You know, we keep on talking about his lack of judgment, but for a man like Mandelson, who utilises everything, what damage could he have done on Capitol Hill? What secrets could he have given away to unscrupulous people from what he learned on Capitol Hill? It is beyond belief that this government.
Because as ambassador, you are privy, particularly Ambassador Washington, to some really high-powered information.
Yeah, and we should say there's no evidence that any of that has been passed on.
Maybe it's because he wasn't there long.
Well, the previous ambassador was investigated by the Ministry of Justice because he passed secret information to a CNN journalist he was having an affair with. So it's not the first one. Well, let's cross back now to Wales. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage is delivering the address.
Positive. Really, really loved it. Your comments about the Welsh media lead me to look forward to the Q&A session we'll be doing in just a moment. Now, for those that thought that today's event was just about James joining us, and perhaps the media thought that's what it was for, perhaps you thought it was what it was for, there's actually something else that we're going to do today that I think is really rather important. As you know, in the run-up to the elections on May the 7th, some of the key moments will be the debates that take place live on television here in Wales between the party leaders. Now, of course, I can't take part in those debates because I'm not running for the Senate and I'm not Welsh, and it wouldn't work. So I've had, over the course of the last week or two, to make a decision as to who the right person is to lead us over the course of these next 2.5 months, to go on television, to take on the other party leaders, to push our message, and somebody that we in Wales, you in Wales, can all get behind. So I will announce now that the leader of Reform UK Wales is a man who was born in the valleys, who, like so many, sadly, young people from Wales, headed off to London for a career in which he did well. He also went on to be a cabinet member of the council in Barnet and the leader of Barnet Council for some years. So we have somebody here from the valleys, somebody here with considerable business experience, but somebody who knows what it is to run big budgets. Somebody who knows how difficult it is to be in government. And that quality, that combination, is what made me realise that the man to do this, I'm going to introduce him to you right now. Oh, he's here, I promise. It's not like Robert Jenrick. Do you remember that? Like Robert. I'm confident Dan Thomas is here. So please welcome the leader of Reform Wales. Please welcome Dan Thomas.
Thank you, Nigel, for the introduction and for the honour of being Reform UK's leader in Wales. Thank you. For those who may not know me, my name is Dan Thomas, and my story is similar to many of you in this room and watching at home. I was born and raised in the Welsh Valleys, where my family lived for generations. My granddad was a miner, as was his dad before him. A strong work ethic ran in the family, and I studied hard at school while juggling paper rounds and training with the local Air Cadets. I have fond memories of growing up in Wales, and I didn't want to leave when I turned 18. My parents were sad to see me go, or so they tell me. But for many young Welshmen and women, good opportunities in Wales are few and far between. The well-paying jobs and the high-flying career paths are simply not there. So I left to build a successful career in financial services in London, while serving my new community as a councillor and council leader. At 27 years, I'm back home, raising 2 young boys in the valley so they can enjoy the same beautiful Welsh countryside that I played in as a child. I've come back to where I belong. But 27 years later, I found myself again asking what opportunities exist for young adults leaving education. Will my boys want to stay in the green grass of home? Or will they feel the need to go over the Severn Bridge to fulfil their maximum potential? 27 years later, the sad truth is that the Labour Party has decimated Wales through inertia and managed decline. Welsh children are being let down by an education system which achieves the poorest results in the UK. Welsh 15-year-olds have the worst PISA scores in the UK for maths, science and reading. The Welsh NHS can't cope despite receiving more funding per head than in England. And under Welsh NHS targets, 85% of cancer patients should be starting treatment within 62 days of an urgent referral. Just 59% receive treatment in time, again worse in England. Over 750,000 Welsh patients are still waiting for treatment. And Labour's response? To place fixing potholes on the equivalent footing to cutting waiting lists. Wales has the highest unemployment rate in the UK, and its economic inactivity rate is higher too. Labour does nothing to change this reality. They believe dependency on the state is their handrail to power, and it's no wonder that our brightest and best are leaving. The cost of living is soaring, made worse by Labour and Plaid Cymru councils, hiking up council tax by an eye-watering 7.1% on average. And when I was a council cabinet member for finance, I managed to cut council tax whilst retaining vital services such as weekly bin collections. And it can be done, but it needs strong, focused leadership from leaders who are on the side of residents and willing to take on vested interests. Young people are being priced out of their towns and villages because Labour have missed their own building targets. And they've overseen the second lowest level of new homes since records began. Again, when I was a council member for cabinet member for regeneration, I oversaw the highest delivery of new homes by a significant margin when compared to neighbouring councils. It can be done, but if we want a bright future for our children, we need to build it and not just talk about it. In Wales, most of us rely on our cars to get around, but Labour and Plaid Cymru are waging war on motorists. They see driving as a luxury, and they think we should all be herded onto unreliable buses and trains. Labour refused to build the M4 relief road, and they rolled out blanket 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. And if they're elected again, pay per mile will be coming for everyone, mark my words. And many in Wales rely on tourism for a living. But those tourists who are determined enough to suffer a clogged M4 motorway, they are now going to be hit with a tourist tax. And we know this will just drive more tourists down the road to Devon and Cornwall instead. And problems are very rarely
Well, that is Dan Thomas, who is the new leader of Welsh Reform, formerly a councillor in Barnet in London, but born in Wales.
He was the leader of the council between 2019 and 2022. He defected to Reform in December.
From the Conservatives.
From the Conservatives. Andy, what do you make of that?
I'm a bit confused about his pitch, which seems to be, I left Wales as soon as I could to go and build a career in London. I then led a London council, and now that I see which way the wind is blowing, having been a Conservative councillor all my life, I've defected, I've jumped ship, like everybody else, and I've identified that one place where Reform might do well is not in London, because I can't win as a Reform councillor in London, because it's the only place where people won't reform. So I'm going to go back to Wales, where I've got a chance. Seems like a grifter to me.
Very cynical, Andy.
Very cynical. All right, we will be talking later in the programme to Nigel Farage's right-hand man, his senior advisor, James Orr. He's going to talk about where Reform UK is headed. But if you want that holiday sun...
There you go.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
There's more very heavy rain to come across parts of Spain and Portugal and North Morocco as we head into the weekend. Strong winds continue to be an issue here as well. A bit breezy in the Canaries, but plenty of sunshine here. Things turning a bit brighter in Catalonia, but there's that next zone of wet weather coming into Spain and Portugal. Showery for Italy and some heavy showers for Croatia and the mainland of Greece as well. Generally dry in Cyprus with some hazy sunshine here. The Canaries remain the place to be for dry, sunny weather this weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 11:15. You're watching and listening to Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Well, Nigel Farage has unveiled Dan Thomas as the leader of Wales to Reform UK. He is a former leader of Barnet Council in North London. He was a Tory leader then, of course, and he defected to Reform in December.
It's going to be a very interesting election, Andrew, because I think most people agree that Labour are not going to do very well and the Conservatives are not going to do very well. But who's going to end up as the biggest party? Will it be Plaid Cymru or Reform? It could make a huge difference.
Yeah. And remember, Labour, Wales has been a Labour heartland for decades, and they lost that Caerphilly by-election last year to Plaid, which was a real turn-up. Again, that was a seat they'd held for over 100 years.
So anything could happen, but one man who's keen for Reform to do well is the senior advisor to Nigel Farage, James Orr, who joins us now. James, thank you so much for coming into the studio. We've focused so much on England, the polls in England, and of course there's a by-election going on in the Manchester area right now. But tell us why Wales is so significant for Reform.
Well, it's significant for Reform because the story has been for so long that Reform is a pro-England party. And it's just a one-issue party, just focusing on immigration. But it's now very clear, as Andrew mentioned, the success in Caerphilly shows that we are able to make huge inroads into Labour heartlands. I mean, that's, Caerphilly was Keir Hardie country.
Yeah.
We went from, I think, 2% in 2021 to 36% in Caerphilly last year. Now, the media narrative was Reform fell at the last hurdle, let Plaid in, the tactical voting. In fact, our internal polling suggests that if there was any tactical voting, it was going for Plaid as the stop Starmer party over us. But it's still quite extraordinary what we're seeing here in the history of British politics, not just in Wales, but of course in Scotland.
Well, I was going to mention Scotland because Scotland, again, has been an area where it's been barren territory for Reform thus far, but that is changing.
Well, it's been barren territory for the right. I mean, the Tories, I remember there's the old Margaret Thatcher joke when she was introduced to Fraser Nelson as a Scottish Conservative, and she said, so you're the one. But yet it looks as if, on current polling, we're going to get between 20 and 23 seats in Holyrood, and will be a firm second, and I think we're going to edge out Labour. This is simply extraordinary. The Conservative Party has never been able to get those sorts of numbers in Scotland in living memory. So too in Wales, and so too up in parts of the north that you mentioned, more Labour heartlands where it looks like we're being extremely competitive, and effectively the Conservative and Unionist Party has ceased to be a party of the union. I think that's going to be very, very clear after May the 7th. And I think what we're seeing is quite remarkable. And I think it also gives the lie to this idea that it's sort of all these Tory defectors are turning us into the Tories 2.0, the sort of retirement home for the Tories line. If that were the case, we wouldn't be going from 2% in Keir Hardie's old constituency to 36%. We would not be as competitive as we are in Labour heartlands up north, and we would not be as competitive as we are it being in Scotland.
But the advantage that Reform has, as you've said, in Wales and Scotland is that there is not a particularly strong Tory party history there. They've done very poorly in recent elections, perhaps 2019 being the exception to that. Whereas in England, which of course has the vast majority of our population, and the big prize is the general election in 2029, there is still this Tory vote of at least 20%, which could make it very difficult for the right overall to win. How are Reform going to approach that?
Well, I mean, I'd say that Reform is beginning to, I mean, after a slightly shaky December, we've gone back up to the high 20s, low 30s. The Tories, some polls put them on 20%, but, you know, as we know with first past the post, there are tipping points, and right now I would say the Tory party in the high teens is at extinction level. It's at double digits in terms of seats. And so, I mean, I think there's still, at the moment, 4 years, 3-4 years is a very long time to wait. And it may be that an election is called a bit sooner than that, but I think we're opening up a very, very big a big margin on the Conservative Party. And I think, you know, my sense is there's 3, 4, 5 points still in the Tory vote, Conservative voters who are looking at us very closely. And I think will be inspired to vote for us as they start to see real electoral success in early May, and as they start to see a really strong top team emerging around Nigel Farage.
A criticism of Starmer's administration is, what does it stand for? What is the narrative? What is his vision? What do people know what Reform stands for, apart from being very tough talk on immigration? Because you completely junked your economic programme, which you had all those ambitious plans, taking people out of tax until they were earning £20,000, restoring the two-child benefit cap. All that's gone. But, so what does Reform stand for, apart from being tough on migration? Well,
First of all, being tough on migration is a very, very important thing to be tough on, because I think what the electorate now recognise is that immigration is not simply a siloed issue that is very important but is unconnected to strain on public services, depressing workers' wages, creating sort of all kinds of sort of problems around cultural cohesion. So the fact that we have been so consistent for so long that nobody in the country is wondering what Reform thinks about immigration, just as nobody in the country is wondering what Reform thinks about net zero or cost of living or crime and law and order and so on. So there is a clarity there across all the sort of big policy North Stars. But to answer your question more generally, Andrew, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Keir Starmer is an ideology, philosophy-free zone. I would say the same is true of the Conservative Party, whereas I think people look at Reform and they see that it stands for the politics of home. The politics of family, of community, of country. That's the slogan that Nigel Farage came back with, perhaps slightly surprisingly to some, when he re-entered the fray in 2024. And home is something that resonates. What is it to be a home? What is it to be a national home? How do we cultivate home? How do we work out on what terms guests to our home are arriving and how long they stay, and so on and so forth. And I think that's the sort of animating metaphor. And I think really that's been the politics of the West since 2016. I think you saw this long period from 1945 to 2016, which was effectively the politics of the cosmopolis, the politics of anywhere land, the politics of nowhere, in other words, of international, democratically unaccountable organisations. And you're seeing all across the West now, in America, of course, now in Australia, all across continental Europe, and most of all here, in the cradle of democracy, parliamentary democracy itself, a party that is not bothered with the old politics of left and right, the dead hand of legacy ideologies from the Uni Party, but is focused on national loyalty, national preference, the national family, on home.
So if you're right, if people catch this vision, if Reform win a majority at the next election, that's your hope, that's your prediction perhaps, how will you then deliver on what you promised? We've seen the Conservative Party fall apart under sleaze allegations and changing leaders in the last Parliament. We're seeing exactly the same thing happen to Labour. How are Reform not going to fall into that same trap?
Well, look, politicians are human beings. No human beings are perfect, and I'm not going to say now that reform is going to be completely free of any of the normal challenges and difficulties that any political party is going to face. We've got 3 or 4 years still to prepare ahead of 2029. It might be sooner than that. We are working incredibly hard. We're facing probably one of the biggest personnel challenges that any political party has faced in history. That's immensely exciting, because one of the great things about starting an entirely new political movement is that you're free from a lot of the kind of backbiting and caucuses and factionalism that is affecting and undermining the existing parties.
But you're also bereft of people around the top table who've been in government and know how to make things work.
Well, that's not quite true, Andrew. I mean, it seems you can't win. You know, either we're a one-man band, or we're sort of, taking on people, Tory defect, or a retirement home. We're actually taking on people with significant ministerial experience now. Well,
you got a couple.
In Suella Braverman and in Robert Jenrick. Danny Kruger, though, hasn't got formal ministerial experience, was a political secretary in Downing Street, was Cameron's speechwriter and so on. We've got Nadeem Zahawi and so on. And I think we'll be seeing more, I hope, before the transfer window closes on May the 7th.
That's interesting.
Well, James Earl, thank you so much for your time this morning. Fascinating to speak to you.
It really is. Now, still ahead, are we seeing the end of days for Sir Keir Starmer? He's about to face questions from the media, and we will be right there. This is Britain's Newsroom, Britain's favourite morning show on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning. After a brief respite in the south yesterday, the rain is back for most of us today, and coupled with a pretty cold easterly wind. It is at least reasonably mild across the south, but we have seen that rain spreading back in through the night. So most places starting soggy, main exception parts of northern England, Northern Ireland, and again western Scotland. In eastern Scotland, the rain continues to fall with some snow over the hills, and the rain across the south also likely to cause some problems. So we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place. The rain in the south, say nothing particularly heavy, but just because it's been so wet recently. Might reach double figures here. Many other areas, certainly further north and east, only in single digits, and it feels pretty cold with this pretty bitter wind blowing along these North Sea coasts. Continuing to feed the cloud and the rain into eastern Scotland. So we'll see a bit more of it turning to snow again here over some of the higher routes by the end of today, and those rainfall totals really building up, especially close to the coast. We'll also see the rain turning to snow over some of the Transpennine routes through this evening's rush hour, so do bear that in mind. And further rain to come in parts of South Wales and southwest England, where the yellow warning remains in place. The winds continue to blow and bring the cloud and the rain into eastern areas as we go through the night. Again, more snow over the higher ground. Will be chiefly rain that we see at lower levels. Again, some shelter in western Scotland, some clearer spells, but further outbreaks of rain continuing across the south. Temperatures mostly holding up above freezing. On to Friday, and again, for many tomorrow, it's a grey day. There'll be further outbreaks of rain to come across England and Wales, and feeding into eastern areas off the North Sea. Again, with some shelter from that easterly wind, western Scotland may well do okay for dry and bright weather. A bit of sunshine here, may well be a fine day for Northern Ireland. Fairly cloudy, but some sunny spells are possible. Elsewhere, lots of cloud, further outbreaks of rain. Still double digits across the south, but many places feeling a lot colder than that. Bye for now.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
This year, the adventure of a lifetime could be on us. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for two to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, New Zealand, or even Sri Lanka. We'll also boost your bank account with a fabulous £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 8225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's, what is the time? It's 11 o'clock on Thursday, the 5th of February, where we're live across the United Kingdom, Britain's newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, the Prime Minister fights back any moment now. Sir Keir Starmer will face the media for questions after he sets out his plan to revamp the High Street.
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear.
Yes, it did.
Well, the Prime Minister is frankly fighting for his political future as the government is forced to go public with what it knew about Lord Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Angela Rayner, his former deputy leader, until September, she's leading the revolt.
Given the public disgust and the sickening behaviour of Peter Mandelson and the importance of transparency, should we not have the ISC not have the same role now in keeping public confidence in the process?
Migrant boat inquiry. Loss of life was avoidable in the English Channel in what's been dubbed the deadliest ever Channel migrant boat sinking, where 30 people died 5 years ago.
And illegal working's been exposed, funny that, in delivery drivers, barbers and nail bars. Apparently they're a hotbed for illegal workers. We're going to break down the figures.
And is there a strike at Sandringham? Staff at the Sandringham estate are told they can reject working for Andrew Mountbatten Winder at his new home. We're saying a big thank you as well to our radio listeners, because year on year on GB News we're up 44% in terms of listeners, and on this show, Britain's favourite mid-morning show, they're up by
87%. So thank you very, very much. So before we revel in our good news, we're going to get some headlines with Sam Francis.
Very
Very good morning to you. Just after 11 o'clock, the top story this hour. The chair of Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee is demanding maximum transparency as the government prepares to hand over files on Peter Mandelson's appointment as US ambassador. Downing Street has been forced to drop plans to control how the documents are released after a revolt last night by Labour MPs. It follows an admission by Sir Keir Starmer himself that he knew Mandelson had remained friends with Jeffrey Epstein even after his conviction. Mandelson has now quit the House of Lords and is facing a criminal investigation, with some Labour MPs calling the situation sickening. But the Housing Secretary Steve Reid insists the Prime Minister acted with decisiveness and with integrity.
I don't justify Mandelson's appointment for one moment. Clearly, it was the wrong thing to do. But he had been the EU Trade Commissioner. He had been the British Secretary of State for Business. And we needed somebody that could go and negotiate a trade deal with the Trump administration that had just come into power. So obviously, it should never have happened. But there was a rationale, and the vetting process did not throw up the concerns that we now know to be the case. So he should not have been appointed, is the truth of it. But he lied. As soon as those lies were exposed, he was sacked.
Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer is warning today the devastating decline of Britain's communities could threaten national security. In a speech in just a few moments' time, the Prime Minister will announce £800 million to revive high streets, arguing strong, connected communities are vital in an unstable world. 40 areas will receive £20 million each. An inquiry into the deadliest Channel crossing on record has concluded that small boat crossings must end and warned some of the 30 people who died could have been saved. The independent probe found systemic failures and chronic staff shortages in the UK's maritime response contributed directly to the tragedy in November 2021, when a crowded inflatable dinghy capsized, leaving just 2 survivors. The inquiry says distress calls were also missed. A French Navy vessel failed to respond, and the UK Coast Guard made flawed decisions, including ending the search for survivors early. Led by Sir Ross Cranston, the inquiry says some deaths were avoidable and describes the failures as a significant breakdown by government. It also makes 18 recommendations to prevent another similar disaster as ministers face renewed pressure over Channel crossings and rescue operations. Nigel Farage has unveiled Dan Thomas as Reform UK's new leader in Wales today. Mr Thomas, who grew up in Wales, was the Conservative leader of Barnet Council from 2019 to 2022 and joined Reform UK in December. Mr Farage says the appointment strengthens Reform's push to challenge Labour in Wales as the party looks to convert frustration over jobs, living costs and devolution into votes. Well, we have had a statement in the last few minutes from Welsh Labour saying, and I quote, "You can't trust Reform, you can't trust their leader." Their words, Reform Wales, they say, led by Tories. In other news this morning, health officials say 36 children across the UK have developed symptoms consistent with toxin poisoning after consuming recalled baby formula. The UK's Health Security Agency says reports have been logged in England, in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, linked to products containing the cerulide toxin. Earlier this month, the Food Standards Agency confirmed Nestlé had recalled several batches of SMA infant and follow-on formula. And last week, Danone also recalled a batch of Aptamil first infant formula. Parents are now being urged to check batch numbers carefully and not use any affected products. Those are the headlines for now. I'll be back with you shortly. Now, though, it's back to Andrew and Miriam.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching and listening to on the radio. 87% increase in listenership.
Record numbers. And I can tell you a lot of black cab drivers listen to GB News because they tell me all the time. They used to say to me, "You that bloke from LBC," when I was in LBC. Now they say, "You that bloke from GB News," which is good.
Absolutely. Very exciting. Keep listening, keep switching on to Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates. And let's see what you've been saying on gbnews.com/your say. Alison says, "I don't think anyone will take notice of what the Prime Minister has to say today. Everyone has lost faith in him because whatever he says now, he won't be believed." Justin says, not looking at you here, Andy, "I'm loving listening to all these Labour apologists." Although, I don't think he's actually talking about you. I think he's talking about... we had on Simon Nash earlier, who was trying to make out that Mandelson might not have known about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes even when he was in prison.
Even when he was in prison for Peter. That was an extraordinary interview.
I tried to dig him out of that hole.
Yeah, I'm afraid I pushed him back in it. But you and I have known for years, Prime Minister's, he's going to do he's going to make a speech today. He wants to talk about this £800 million fund to revive communities.
Pride and Place programme.
And there will be questions afterwards. How many questions do you think the press will ask about Pride and Place?
This is another example of Starmer's catastrophic judgment.
Yes.
He's allowing the press to ask him questions about this Pride and Place. He's imagining that I don't know why, but he's imagining the press are going to ask him lots of questions about local communities, bringing local communities together, buying derelict properties, making new houses for people, and all they're going to be interested in is what did you know about Mandelson's relationship.
But what's the alternative, Carol? Because if he doesn't go out and continue doing his job being Prime Minister, people will say he's running scared, he's hiding, he's bunkered down.
Well, he could make a speech.
He has to carry on doing the job.
He could make a speech and move on.
Yeah. He's not going to be able to move on, though, is he? We all know that.
But
and I think
he needn't have opened it up to questions. That's the point. He could have done
you can be sure he won't do a Donald Trump and take every question in the room. I bet you he'll restrict the number of questions.
Well, he'll have his pet people who he will talk to first and try and they will have been briefed to talk about the community's business. But this just shows his naivety, his stupidity.
Because it will lead the bulletins, the lunchtime. It will be in time for the lunchtime bulletins. It will be the Prime Minister on the rack again.
Of course,
this is in some ways there is a real aspect of this story, which is what did Mandelson tell Epstein? Was the Official Secrets Act broken? Was the insider trading, which the police will investigate, will come out? And there's the kind of, I wouldn't say fabricated, I'm not saying it's not real, but there's the media storm aspect of this story, which Keir Starmer could ignore. If his backbenchers were behind him, they could ignore.
Well, I think the problem is that the media love this, let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a feeding frenzy.
Talking about this is much more interesting than talking about the Pride in Place programme.
Exactly.
That's the truth. Now, the tragedy, I think, of this government is that despite what some people say, they're genuinely doing some really good things. I think this is an example of an issue, the high street and the derelict high streets we have all over the country. They've been ignored by successive governments for too long. They're investing £800 million. Is anyone going to notice?
No.
Is anyone going to care?
This isn't just about the high street. It's not just about. It's about more than that. How is this different from Boris's levelling up?
The difference is Boris didn't do anything. Boris had a slogan.
And you truly believe he's going to do something here?
Well, yeah, because there's actually an infrastructure and a plan in place to deliver this. Boris did nothing.
And if you recall, one of the key policies this government were going to do, they were going to reform the planning system to speed things up so they could build more houses.
And they are doing that.
Yes.
It's not happened.
It is happening. It's happening.
We're going crossing the line to the Prime Minister now. He is in East Sussex. By the way, the local elections have been cancelled. Just a bit of fact for you.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to begin by addressing some of the issues around the Mandelson case. I entered politics later in life. I did so after a career in the criminal justice system, including as Director of Public Prosecutions. I entered politics not for personal gain, not for status, and not to live a life detached from the reality that most people face. I entered politics because I wanted to change our country for the better, to make it fairer, safer, more secure. And I still believe that most people who serve in public life, whether as civil servants or elected politicians, do so for the same reason, because they believe in service, because they believe in duty, because they believe in the public good. But that is not why some people do it. And that is not why Mandelson did it. And that sense of duty only matters if the standards of public life are upheld. And in recent days, serious allegations and serious evidence has emerged concerning Mandelson's conduct, including his relationship with Epstein, a convicted sex offender. It had been publicly known for some time that Mandelson knew Epstein. But none of us knew the depth and the darkness of that relationship. What has come to light has raised serious questions. Information that was not known at the time of his appointment. Before he was appointed ambassador, Mandelson was asked directly about the nature of his relationship with Epstein. He was asked whether he had stayed at Epstein after his conviction. And when, later, further information came to light, he was asked whether he had accepted gifts and hospitality, about whether he had been fully transparent about the relationship. The information now available makes clear that the answers he gave were lies. He portrayed Epstein as someone he barely knew. And when that became clear, and it was not true, I sacked him. Such deceit is incompatible with public service. Let me be clear, no one is above accountability. And no one, however well connected, however experienced, however senior, should hold public office if they cannot meet the basic test of honesty. I also want to address the publication of the information Mandelson provided during the appointment process. I understand the strength of public feeling. I share the anger that people feel when powerful individuals appear to escape scrutiny. And I want to be able to release those documents as quickly as possible. I wanted to release them yesterday, in fact, and to talk about them at Prime Minister's questions. But the police have advised that releasing certain information now could risk prejudicing a future investigation or legal process. And however frustrating from my personal point of view that is, and it is, I will not take any step, however politically tempting, however popular, that risks justice for victims. Because this is not and must never become a political game. The victims of Epstein have lived with trauma that most of us can barely comprehend. And they've had to relive it again and again. They have seen accountability delayed and too often denied. To them, I want to say this. I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. And sorry that even now you're forced to watch this story unfold in public once again. But I also want to say this. In this country, we will not look away. We will not shrug our shoulders. And we will not allow the powerful to treat justice as optional. We will pursue the truth. We will uphold the integrity of public life. And we will do everything within our power and in the interests of justice to ensure accountability is delivered. That is what the public expects. That is what the victims deserve. And it is what I will do. Now, I'm here today in Hastings for similar reasons. Because I love this country. It is the greatest country in the world. the progress and prosperity I've seen throughout my life, the journey that I've been on personally, from a working class background to this, I owe everything to this country and its values. I've spent most of my professional life serving them, not just in politics. And I believe that pride, shared by millions, is the key not only for uniting our country, but also for finding in each other the strength to create, in defiance of an increasingly volatile world, a Britain built for all. Now, you heard it from Kevin, or I think I should address you as Mr. Hastings. And I want to thank you and everyone else like you who give their heart and soul to the ground beneath their feet. I believe in that pride. I believe in that purpose. I believe in British values, in rules that protect those in need, in the freedom to live and let live, in decency and tolerance, in respect for difference under the same flag. A common good. The idea fundamental to the Labour Party that a nation is not just a collection of individuals, but rather that we're bound by values, by common endeavour, and by responsibilities that we owe one another as partners in the project of this nation. I believe in our way of doing things when it comes to integration, a British way that has always been grounded in the fairness of the two-way street, in rights and responsibilities, in contribution, the common sense that says people who come here, who work hard, contribute to our success, embrace our rules, buy into this project, they can become not just citizens, but neighbours, friends, equals, part of us. But most of all, I believe that these values make us strong, that in a world that increasingly preys on weakness, I believe Britain is stronger as a tolerant, decent and respectful country. But we must be honest, because while I will always believe in these values, we cannot be blind to the reality that in recent years their practice has often become poor, and that when it comes to our shared responsibilities, we've taken our eye off the ball, and that our social contract is currently nowhere near strong enough to weather the storms of this world, because it's been undermined by political neglect, the scorched earth of Tory austerity, high streets, libraries, youth clubs, the places that shape a life, that bring different people together, that create the bonds of memory and pride in so many towns. They were just abandoned. Until you see now, sometimes from the very same people, a politics that has no interest in rebuilding any of that, only in exploiting the social scars. You see it in the industrialised grievance factory, in parts of social media. Miserable video after miserable video, telling you that entire cities and towns, the great communities of this country, are wastelands, no-go zones. And worse, selling the lie, defied every day by millions of people in this country, that people who look different cannot really live together. I reject that completely. And you see it in politicians, like the Reform candidate for Gorton and Denton, who look at people like Rishi Sunak, Shabana Mahmood, and presumably Marcus Rashford, Shirley Bassey, Anna Sala, and say, they can't really be English or Welsh or Scottish because they are not white. An affront to British values as I see them. And I tell you, as long as I've got breath in my body, I will always fight against that politics. And on that, honestly, I never thought I would see the day when the Conservative Party would tolerate, for months, a man who went to Birmingham and said that the city had failed at integration because he didn't see enough white faces. That is a disgrace, and he should have been sacked months ago. But look, it's not just the right. Britain's also been let down by a mindset on the left of politics that is either too slow to defend core British values or that ducks the challenge of integration entirely, clinging to a kind of remote liberalism that is content merely to dispense transfers and targets from Whitehall, rather than nurture pride, belonging and responsibility from the ground up in our communities. You know, the Labour Party is the institution that stood with working class communities in cities like Glasgow and Liverpool, and door by door, street by street, turned a politics shaped by grievance and religious sectarianism into one of national renewal. That is our task again, because politics in this dangerous era, it's no longer about left and right, but a contest between renewal and grievance, between those who believe society is a zero-sum competition and those who believe we can unite for the higher purpose of our community, our country, our common good. This government chooses the path of unity because that is the only way we can change Britain, the only way we can take control of our future, stand up to the world and walk forward together. And mark my words, it is a vital task. Enemies of Britain are active in this country trying to destabilise us. And so a strong society is imperative, not just on its own terms, but also for national security. To put it more bluntly, any country that cannot keep its high streets alive, its bills down, and its people feeling respected will struggle to meet the test of our times. So we must strengthen our society because it's vital for the future of this country. Now, it starts with the economy. That's fundamental. If we're going to defeat the politics of grievance, we must tackle the cost of living crisis, and we must raise living standards, not just in a few cities or regions, but across the entire country. And it's not hard to understand why. If you're simply battling through the days, it's hard to look forward with hope, let alone find the strength in each other. And so, all the decisions we took at the budget, getting inflation down, freezing rail fares, freezing fuel duty, slashing the cost of childcare for working parents, supporting people with their energy bills, but also investing in every community in this country, backing a proper industrial policy, raising the national minimum wage, that is all the absolute foundation of a strong society, essential for restoring hope in Britain. Second, we need to reform the state so that it recognises contribution as the common sense basis for integration, most of all on migration. Now, I know that migration is bound up with who we are. Of course it is. It's fundamental for the stories people tell about themselves, their family, their history and relationships. And I will never denigrate the contribution migrants make to our society and our story. Quite the opposite. And yet, it seems obvious to me that failures in Britain's migration system under the Tories were so shocking that they weakened trust in politics, faith in democracy to deliver what people vote for, and now, exploited by politicians of grievance, support the idea that diverse people can ever truly come together. Now, I reject that politics with every fibre in my being. But if you're serious about bringing this country together, you cannot ignore this issue. And so, yes, our reforms on migration are about taking control of our borders, but they're also about contribution. I mean, go back to Windrush, which is such an important moment in our national story. The people who came here, they weren't victims, they weren't vulnerable. Britain didn't invite them here as an act of compassion. That is liberal vanity. No, they came here because Britain needed them, because they wanted to come. And Britain wanted them to make a contribution. And they did. They helped rebuild this country. Now, I think there's far more dignity in that story, the real story, than in this kind of fairy tale of Britain's charity. There's a mutual respect in it, a fairness grounded in contribution that I believe has always been the basis of trust in migration policy for the vast majority of people in this country. And so our reforms to migration, they will boost integration, they will restore trust, and they will help return us to a situation where the migration policy cannot be exploited by people who think that whiteness is the same thing as Britishness. And third, we need to be more vigilant in asserting British values and call out those who want to divide us, whoever they are. Now, obviously, that goes for any form of extremism, whether that is extreme right ideologies and their hatred of Muslims, or Islamist ideologies and their hatred of Britain and Jews. But it also means we've got to fight a more insidious, passive tolerance. I mean, it's not hard to support the just cause of a Palestinian state without being anti-Semitic. Millions of people do that, and I'm one of them. It is the policy of this government and this country to recognise Palestine. And yet, on the marches that supposedly support that cause, you will often see clearly racist banners, anti-Semitic hate, a fact that leaves a minority community in this country scared and intimidated. A community which, let's not forget, suffered the most recent terrorist attack on these shores. How can that be right for a country with values like ours? How can it be right to turn a blind eye to racist hatred of any kind, whether victims are Jews, Muslims, or any minority? It can't. And so, frankly, we do need to be much clearer as a society about what we expect of people and the responsibilities that come with rights. And that means much stronger powers to the Charity Commission to shut down charities that promote extremism. It means tougher regulation of homeschooling, because schools are so important for integration. And so we need a higher bar for people who want to opt out of that responsibility. And it means we need to improve, across the state, English language provision. Now, it's a simple argument. Everyone who comes here, who lives here, should have an opportunity to learn English, because it's essential for participation in our society. And so they should be expected to learn English. And yet, for years, we've simply not asked people to do that. That is a recipe for exclusion, and frankly, for people being vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. So we will change that, and we will stand united and together against any individual or organisation that does not want to shoulder the responsibility of British values. Fourth and finally, we've got to reverse the devastating decline in our communities. Give power, agency and control to people who want to improve their community. Now, you can see the signs over here, Pride in Place, led by you, backed by the government. That is a £5 billion programme with an extra £800 million today, investing in 284 neighbourhoods in every corner of our country, including here. Because pride is the social glue, the force that holds together a community and a country. And yet, there's a paradox. This is the country where local identities, down to the village level, burn more fiercely than any other, where accents can change over a very small distance, where you get, amongst other things, a football league pyramid of 92 teams, 92 identities, 92 passions, and countless local rivalries. That's unique. We're a country of 4 nations, distinct and proud, where, as this weekend's rugby will show, tribal rivalry is part of who we are. And yet 4 nations who time and again run through the fire together, a country forged by the solidarity of working people. But this is also a country, and this is certainly for England, where the state is one of the most centralised in the world, and where all that ferocious pride is completely ignored by politics. Take a man some of you know, Bernard Stonestreet, who I think is here. Where's Bernard? Bernard, very good to see you here. 24 years of service in the Royal Marines, I believe. Tours of the Far East, the Middle East, Europe, and Northern Ireland. Now, for many of us, that may seem enough service, but not for Bernard, because Bernard works tirelessly for Sussex, Hastings, the ground beneath your feet. He's opened a centre for veterans, where they can come and get support for mental health advice, particularly from people who've been there. He's opened a veterans cafe too, and he's looking to help homeless veterans as well. Thank you, Bernard. Or what about Miranda, who got so fed up with fly tipping and litter in Edinburgh that she started picking it up herself? And then, when people started saying they wanted to help, she set up litter busters. Now their community is cleaner, and that may not sound like a lot, but it makes a huge difference. It changes how you feel about your town, your future, even your country, when you look out the window and see that people care. Now, ask yourself this question. Wouldn't politics be better if we truly backed that kind of pride? And this is what the Tory Levelling Up scheme never really understood. Yes, people want investment, and this government will back them. We're rebuilding our public services, opening new nurseries, breakfast clubs, health centres, investing in community infrastructure. But investment is a means and not an end. It's about power as well as pounds and pence, a way for communities in an insecure world to take control of their own fate. So let's regenerate the town centre in Bexhill. Let's bring a dance and arts centre to the Grimsby Docks. Invest in the youth centre in Rhyl. Run bingo nights in Coleraine. Clean up Coatbridge. Create better sports facilities right here in Hastings. But most of all, let's do it together. Because I've always believed that people with skin in the game make better decisions about their community and their future. And so that is what we will do. A programme that backs people to change what matters to them. The very definition of a two-way street. A partnership of pride. That is how the state should work. And with my government, it will. Because I tell you, if you want to know where hope lives in Britain, it's in our communities. That is where people come together. It is where you will find our common good. And that is where we will discover once again the courage in each other. Communities backed by the state, fired up by pride, taking responsibility for the renewal of this great nation. So, whatever your politics, if you're proud of your community, join us. Because this is a cause that will give you control over your future, strengthen us on the world stage, create a Britain truly built for all, and show, in defiance of the politics of grievance, that we can walk forward together. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm now going to take a number of questions from the media. Can I start with Chris from the BBC? Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris Mason, BBC News. Prime Minister, why was it that a man who had already twice resigned from government and, crucially, had a publicly known ongoing friendship with a convicted paedophile was appointed by you as ambassador to Washington? And given all of this, what do you say to those in the country and those in your own party who say, frankly, that you have run out of steam?
Well, Chris, let me just address that head on and perhaps clarify something I said at Prime Minister's Questions yesterday about the relationship between Mandelson and Epstein. Because what I meant was it has been known publicly for some time that they knew each other. And that is precisely why, when we were going through the appointment process for the ambassador role, we asked questions about the nature and extent of that relationship. And what I didn't say yesterday, partly inhibited by the approach of the police, is that that is precisely why those questions were asked. Questions about the nature and extent of the relationship, whether Mandelson had stayed, as was suggested, at Epstein's premises. And the answers given to those questions were intentionally intended to create the impression that Mandelson barely knew Epstein, deliberately to create that impression. I had no reason at that stage to think that was anything other than the truth, and therefore we proceeded. What I learned in September was that it was not the truth, when further emails came to light, I think Bloomberg. And having asked some further questions, including questions about whether Mandelson received gifts and benefits and hospitality, and the nature of the relationship, I sacked Mandelson from the role. Now, I regret making the decision to have appointed him in the first place. Had I known at the time what I know now, or knew in September, I'd have never done it. And that's why today I've apologised for the fact that I appointed him in the first place and I believed his lies. Thank you very much, Chris. And look, we're moving forward as a country. Today, you've just heard the speech about Pride in Place, one of the most important projects that we're running, that will put money in communities right across the country. And that is the driving purpose of this government, changing lives for the better, focusing on Pride in Place, where people live in their own communities, and making sure we're utterly focused on the cost of living. Thank you, Chris. Beth, can I come to you?
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. Prime Minister, we can all hear your anger, your regret, and most importantly, your apology to victims of Epstein for appointing Mandelson as your US ambassador. But look, whatever he said or didn't say, it has proved a catastrophic error of your judgment to put him back into your government. Some of your MPs believe you must take responsibility for this in order to restore trust in politics amongst the public. And some are saying publicly now that you should stand down because your positions become untenable. Why are they wrong? Thank you.
Well, Beth, as I've said a number of times, I regret the decision to appoint Mandelson as ambassador. He was asked questions about the nature and extent of his relationship with Epstein, and he told lies. I had no reason at the time to know they were lies. Subsequently, I found out them to be lies. And this week, we found out way beyond the lies that we found out in September. We found out what he was up to in the aftermath of the 2008 crash, when most of the government and most of the country was doing its level best to make sure people didn't lose their jobs, their livelihoods, and their savings. And at that time, he chose to disclose sensitive secrets to Epstein, almost simultaneously as receiving them. And that is what I meant when I said earlier about the deceit and the standards that I stand for in public life. Yes, at the time I appointed him, I got answers from him which I believed to be true. He painted a picture of barely knowing Epstein. I didn't know that was lies at the time. I regret I didn't know. I've apologised for the fact that I appointed him in the first place, having believed those lies. Thank you, Beth. Robert.
What do you say to your MPs? Someone publicly saying this morning they think your position is untenable. Please, directly, what do you say to them?
Firstly, let me say I understand their anger and frustration. I am angry and frustrated like them, because nobody wants to see these deceits in public life. They are angry about his association with Epstein, as am I. They're angry about what he did at the tail end of the last Labour government, and frustrated, as am I, that the full information of what was asked and answered when he was appointed can't be in the public domain. That is frustrating. As I say, I had hoped to deploy some of that at PMQs yesterday, because I wanted people to know what was said and what I received, but frustrating that can't be done. So I understand their frustration, but we must remain focused on what we were elected into government to do, which is to change this country for the better for millions of people, and that's what we will do. And today, in Pride in Place, what we've done on the economy are examples, but only examples of what we're doing. Thank you, Beth. Robert, well, hang on, Robert, ITV.
Prime Minister, time and again during the general election campaign, you promised to end chaos in politics. You failed miserably, and there is no one to blame but yourself. If your MPs were to decide that they wanted another leader, and if somebody else put themselves forward as leader, would you fight that?
Well, Robert, I was elected on a mandate in 2024 to change the country for the better, and that is what we're doing. And if you look at what we've done, for example, on the economy, with inflation coming down, and the Bank of England says coming down to target in the first half of this year, with interest rates being cut now 6 times, which is the highest rate of reduction since the 2008 crash, with the work we've done to lift 500,000 children out of poverty, that is the change that and the Pride in Place work that we're doing, examples of which I've just gone through, that is what we were elected to do as a government. That is the change we're bringing about. And am I frustrated that the focus is not on that and on other things because of the misbehaviour and deceit of other people? Of course I am. But of course I am. I understand that. But I was lied to. I was lied to. Deceit. Now, am I frustrated and angry that the good work we're doing gets out of focus because of that, and that tomorrow's front pages are unlikely to be about the Pride in Place project? Of course I am. Of course I'm angry and frustrated about that. But that is the work, that is the change that will affect millions of lives, and I will remain focused on it. LB, will you just... I've got Natasha from LBC.
Natasha from LBC. Prime Minister, you mentioned national security in your speech just now being vital for our future. Donald Tusk has said Poland will launch an investigation into links between Jeffrey Epstein and Russian intelligence. Would you like to do the same? And on Mandelson, obviously you are a distinguished lawyer. I think the question many of our listeners and viewers have is, when you had that evidence about Lord Mandelson handed to you, why did you then believe him?
Just on the first point, I think whether it's Poland or elsewhere, we're obviously always working with our allies on any issues of national security. On the question of why, look, the questions were asked of Mandelson, and he provided answers to those questions. They were about the nature and extent of his relationship with Epstein. They were about issues such as, did you stay at the premises? Because that was in the public domain. That was something we needed answers to. And when he provided answers to that, I had no reason to believe he was telling anything other than the truth. In September, Bloomberg produced some emails which made it clear to me and others that what I'd been told at the time was clearly not truthful, which is why I sacked him. What we've learned this week is the further deceit that has been carried out in relation to government secrets that were released during the very course of the recovery when the government was working so hard to the 2008 crash. But I believed what he said to me. I regret that. I apologise for having believed him. He gave answers to the questions that were asked of him. I assumed and treated those answers as true. That was obviously a mistake. Thank you. I've got Sophia from Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You've spoken passionately today about victims and apologised to them. So I have to ask, even though you did not know the full extent of Mandelson's ongoing friendship with Epstein, it was never a good look at the time. Did you not personally have any reservations whatsoever about what you did know about that ongoing friendship? Any doubts, any curiosities? And do you feel confident you can ride out this storm?
Well, the original, there was a due diligence exercise that culminated in questions being asked. Because I wanted to know the answer to certain issues, that's why those questions were asked. The answer to those questions were not truthful. There was then, I should add, security vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him clearance for the role, and you have to go through that before you take up the post. Clearly, both the due diligence and the security vetting need to be looked at again. I've already strengthened the due process. I think we need to look at the security vetting because it now transpires that what was being said was not true, and had I known then what I know now, I'd never have appointed him in the first place. In relation to your question, I was elected in with this Labour government to bring about change for millions of people. That's what I intend to do. The examples today are only examples of the pride in place. That makes a massive difference to so many communities, and it's not just a question of the money we're putting into communities, it's the power we're giving to them to make the choice over what the money is used for, which is vitally important. And the work we're doing on the economy to stabilise it, which is what we've done, will be to the huge benefit of millions of people across the country. Can I have Dave from the Mirror, please? Dave.
Dave Back from Mirror. Could I just clarify on the basis of what you said today and what you said yesterday? What was your understanding of the relationship between Mandelson and Epstein was? I mean, were you under the impression then that he had completely broken off contacts, friendship at the point of conviction? And at the point you knew that there had been a relationship in the past, you knew that this was potentially a very dangerous situation that could come back to haunt you. Did you, as it were, make a deal with the devil that you knew that this could be damaging, but at the same time, Donald Trump is equally sort of impacted by this?
No, the questions were precisely to get to that question of what was the nature and extent of the relationship, and then details about places he may have stayed. And the picture painted, the impression deliberately given by the information that was provided and the information that wasn't provided. So the information that was provided and that which wasn't was deliberately intended by Mandelson to make my team believe that he barely knew Epstein. That's the picture he painted. That was a lie, but that's the lie that he painted, and that's the basis on which we made our decision. Can I have Kieran from The Guardian?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Kieran Stacey from The Guardian. Prime Minister, I wanted to read out some of the things that Labour MPs have told us in the last 24 hours about you. One told us, I'm personally not sure I could trust myself to back the Prime Minister in a confidence vote. Another said, it's like Chris Pincher on steroids, it's over. Another said, this government is on the run. One former minister said, it's time for a fresh start, the sooner the better. Isn't the real lesson from yesterday that you can no longer command the majority in the Commons? And if so, isn't your authority fatally undermined?
Well, look, I understand the anger and frustration amongst Labour MPs about what has happened, the deceit, both in the appointment of Mandelson as ambassador and what happened at the tail end of the last Labour government. I actually share that anger and frustration. It was palpable yesterday. I'm not surprised. As I said, most people come into public life to serve the common good, actually whichever political party they're in. And we may have different approaches, different politics, different ideologies, but the vast majority of people come into public life to do their best to improve their communities, to improve their country. And so when people who've been elected into power with that mindset find out that somebody else who's held a position of power does not share that mindset, has undermined it, they're angry and frustrated, not just at the deceit and the lies in the individual cases, but because they know it undermines what they stand for, the politics that they believe in. Now, I understand that, but we are changing this country for the better. We had 14 long years of failure under the Tory government, and we're correcting that. We've stabilised the economy, we've put a huge amount of investment into our public services, and we're rebuilding our communities. And I intend to go on doing that vital work for our country because I believe it is the absolute focus and the first importance for this government. I've got Hugo from the Eye.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Hugo Jai from the Eye paper. You've talked today about what you see as some of the successes of your government, including the Pride in Place programme. You've also issued a warning about the prospect of a reform or Conservative government, which you say would undermine national cohesion. Is your message to your own MPs who are now sceptical about your leadership that removing you would destroy the work your government's done and make a reform-led government more likely?
My message is that every minute we spend talking about anything other than the cost of living, Pride in Place, how we stabilise our economy, and how we make the massive argument that we need to make, the argument of our time, that we must unite this country, understand that to be British is to be tolerant, reasonable, compassionate and diverse, and fight for it against the toxic division of reform. Every minute we spend not talking and focusing on that is an absolute minute wasted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you all.
In theory, making a speech about refunding the high street, but I think he got a little bit...
I don't suspect there'll be much coverage of his attempts to revive
alien
communities because it's all going to be about...
It's hijacked by Mandelson.
But we've only got a couple of minutes, Carol Malone. Did he inspire you with his robust defence of Mandelson?
We've all been laughing here at him because every time he tries to address the cost of living crisis in his Pride in Place, it goes back to Mandelson. And his mantra on that is, I didn't know. You can't keep on saying you didn't know. We know he knew stuff. He admitted in the Commons yesterday he knew, and now he's denying it again today. I mean, this was all about covering his backside, Mandelson.
Carol, I'm so sorry because we've got another exciting speech to go to.
It's Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, who is responding to Keir Starmer. Bet you can't wait for this. Well, apparently we're going to have Kemi Badenoch.
Let's talk seriously about a vote of no confidence to force the moment. Keir Starmer's position is clearly untenable, but it is for Labour MPs to decide when he goes, because it is a question of when, not if, he goes. Just now, Keir Starmer has given a speech supposedly about local funding and integration, no doubt another mission or pledge or milestone that was made up by an aide yesterday afternoon, yet another relaunch that in a week's time no one will remember. And he apologised for believing Mandelson's lies. That's not good enough. What he should apologise for is ignoring security advice and vetting that showed him Mandelson should never have been appointed in the first place. But, ladies and gentlemen, you will notice that he cannot bring himself to do that because his self-righteousness is his greatest weakness. And what else have the British public got on offer? Fresh from announcing a pubs policy this week with a £10 billion black hole in it, Nigel Farage this morning announced his new Welsh leader after the last one was sent to prison in November for taking bribes from Russia. We all know a reform government would just be more of the same, more incompetence, more dodgy appointments, more drama, when what this country needs is some serious government. There is only one party in Britain today that is actually serious. Only one that is doing the deep thinking and the hard work to fix our country's problems and is ready to deliver the second we come into office. That is my Conservative Party. And some people will ask, and we must admit, yes, we made mistakes, but we acknowledge them and we have learned from them. That is the difference between us and everyone else. We are on the side of hard-working people, people who do the right thing and are fed up with a government that isn't working for them. We are on the side of those who play by the rules. We are not on the side of people claiming benefits when they could and should be working. We are not on the side of spivs and scammers who think the rules don't apply to them. Britain is not being governed. We need to show that we can do better, that a government with a plan can fix the things going wrong in our country. That is our alternative. Our strong borders plan, our cheap power plan, our £47 billion savings plan, our plan to abolish stamp duty, our plan to fix the high street, our plan to get Britain working again. That is what we believe in. That is the change that we will deliver. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I would now like to take some questions from the media. First up is Catherine Forster from GB News.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. The Prime Minister has just said that, effectively, he's going nowhere. And he's said he wants to clarify his comments yesterday, that what he was actually saying was simply that he knew publicly that Epstein and Mandelson knew each other. Does that begin to cut it?
Not in the slightest. I forced him to make a confession yesterday, and he is backtracking now because he's a coward. The fact is, he saw security vetting that had information that every single person in this room would have realized made Mandelson unsuitable, and he still went ahead and appointed him because he thought he was being clever. We all saw that press conference where they were calling him, oh, our Peter, to us he's just Peter. They thought they could get away with it, and now it's all come out. So no, I'm afraid it doesn't cut it. I think what he said this morning was actually shameful. He should be apologizing for ignoring the security advice rather than apologizing for believing Mandelson. Next up is Joe Pike from BBC.
Joe Pike, BBC News. Kemi Badenoch, why didn't you say all of this 14 months ago when Lord Mandelson was appointed, when we knew he'd had a relationship post-conviction with Epstein, and we knew he'd stayed at the New York apartment, where we'd seen the photos of the two trying on clothes together, and where your political ally and mentor, Michael Gove, said Mandelson was, quote, the best choice to handle Trump? Isn't the truth that you are acting outraged today, but when it all mattered 14 months ago, you, like so many other MPs, chose to look away?
That is complete nonsense. First of all, Ian Duncan Smith spoke up and said this was wrong. Caroline Dinenage spoke up and said that it was wrong. Lots of Conservative MPs said it. We are a strong team. I don't need to say every single thing at every single moment, especially as I believe that the Prime Minister had carried out security vetting. He's the one who had the information. So I don't understand how this is now the Tories' fault. I think that's completely preposterous. Okay, this is Labour's fault. Rob Powell from Sky News.
Hi, thank you, Rob Powell, Sky News. Are you saying then you want a general election now, if you were talking about a vote of no confidence? And if there was to be one, how do you think you'd do?
Britain is not being governed. That is what this speech is about. We need a better government. Labour was voted in with a huge majority. They have a majority of about 160. They can't get anything done. Something is wrong. And yes, while we're all reading the tittle-tattle of who said what in the Epstein files, our country is going backwards. That is what worries me. If a general election is on the cards, we'll take it because we know we will do a better job. But what we need to make sure is that the public can see what the alternatives are. This is not a game. We're not throwing dice. This is about people's lives. And I am very worried about what is happening in our country. I am very worried about some of the nonsensical legislation that is going through Parliament, what they're doing on veterans, what they're doing on Chagos. And that's before we get to the pretend private members' bills, which are really government-sponsored bills around things like assisted dying, things that were never in the manifesto. Something is going horribly wrong, and we can see a government that is distracted. It's all about their leadership ambitions. None of the cabinet secretaries are delivering anything at all. Right now, my belief is that there won't be a general election until 2029, because most of those Labour MPs know that they will not be coming back. But they at least have the opportunity to do better. They can pick someone else or force the government to do better, rather than putting their heads in the sand. That is what I'm asking them for. Next is Harry Horton, ITV.
Thank you, Harry Horton, ITV News. I've spoken to lots of Labour MPs over the last few days, and some of your own MPs as well, and many of them are worried that actually this scandal, and ones we've seen under your party previously, actually undermine trust and faith in all politicians. And is that something you're worried about?
It is something that I'm worried about. As I said, we made mistakes, but we acknowledged them, we learned from them, and as people will remember, we tried to fix them. We don't need to go back into what happened several years ago to see that we were actually trying to fix things when we saw the leader was going wrong. Labour are too scared to do that, and yet they can't even do basic things like make modest changes in the welfare budget. They can't get any legislation through. We're spending most of our time having general debates and going nowhere. Something is seriously wrong. Britain is not being governed, and that is what we need to think about. How do we get ourselves into a better place? Aggie Champ from LBC.
Aggie Chambray, LBC News. Ms Badenoch, do you worry that this scandal and the potential end of this administration could hasten or make more likely a Reform UK government?
Reform UK is more of the same. They're the ones who actually have a former leader in prison right now. There is no reason that we should even think for a second that these Epstein files don't have something that might implicate them. A lot of Nigel Farage has mentioned multiple times, I'm not in the Epstein files. Nigel Farage has mentioned multiple times, so is his party treasurer, Nick Candy. People can go and investigate. But if people think that we're getting a clean government with reform, I think that that is for the birds. That is not what the country is asking for. They may be doing well because of protest votes, but we need to start having an honest conversation about how we can get a proper government. Helen William? PA? No? Okay. Tim Stanley, Daily Tea.
Thank you. Good morning. I have to stand. No, I don't have to stand up. Do I have to stand up? Okay, fine. I'm going to stand up for the camera. And now I've knocked my coffee over. No, don't worry about that. That's fine. Good morning. You've invited Labour MPs to kick out Keir Starmer and, quote, do better. Well, if they did do that, it's very likely they would replace him with Angela Rayner. Speaks for itself. What do you think of Angela Rayner? Do you really think she would make for a, quote, better government? And is there a risk that in defenestrating the Labour moderates, you're actually inviting a proper socialist to take over Britain?
So I think that is an excellent question. I'm not worried about Angela Rayner. I think that I can deal with Angela Rayner. The real... You've hit upon something that is crucial. It doesn't matter who they change leader to, it's still going to be a Labour person. What we need them to look at is the mistakes that they've been making and how they can fix that. Whoever it is that they pick has to acknowledge that a lot of mistakes have been made. The country is not crying out for socialism. The country is crying out for competence and fixing the economy, putting money in people's pockets. Businesses are crying out for relief. They want the government to get the boot off their necks. It is not a coincidence that Labour MPs can't get into pubs and hairdressers at the moment. That is not because they're crying out for more socialism. What we want to see is them putting the British people back at the forefront of their minds. They're not thinking about any of the people out there right now. They're just thinking about themselves. So let's stop talking about Angela Rayner or West Streeting. Let's start talking about the people out there. That's what I'm worried about. Lucy Fisher, FT.
Ms Badenoch, the Conservatives have raised concerns about the links between Peter Mandelson and the US technology firm Palantir, which has gone on to win UK public sector contracts. Is there a wider problem here with political appointments for key ambassadorial roles if they go to people with complex business and corporate interests? Are you in favour of scrapping political appointments in favour of professional diplomats, or for introducing new safeguards to stop this kind of potentially conflicted interests? Thank you.
So our issue is not with Palantir or even Palantir and Peter Mandelson. It's the fact that the meetings were not minuted, so no one knows what was discussed. And then there was a direct grant of £240 million, not a tender, not a bid. That's something that needs to be looked at very, very closely. That's the issue. It's not really about the political appointment. Political appointments can be good, they can be necessary. Just don't pick the best friend of a convicted paedophile who's still been hanging out with him afterwards. That's the real issue. Max Kendix, The Times.
Thank you. You say you're not in the files, but there is an email in the files suggesting that David Cameron's top aides tried to set up a meeting between him as Prime Minister with Jeffrey Epstein and Woody Allen in Paris. That meeting never ended up happening, but are you absolutely confident there are no connections between senior Conservatives and Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm a senior Conservative. I have a great shadow cabinet. A meeting that never happened, which somebody asked for, I don't think is particularly interesting or relevant. There are lots of people's names in those files. My name isn't in them. Neither is anyone in my shadow cabinet, as far as I'm aware. I think that I don't think, James, are you in the files? No. Okay, I think we're good. Martin Beckford, The Mail.
Thank you. I was just wondering, what did you make of the police telling the government last night not to publish documents that they say might undermine their investigation into Peter Mandelson? Are you concerned that this might let Keir Starmer off the hook? Thank you.
So, it's a very interesting question. So Keir Starmer was leaning on that in his speech, saying, I really wanted to release all the files, but the police have asked me not to. He did not want to release the files. I asked him in September. He had plenty of time. He didn't release them. It wasn't until we used a parliamentary mechanism called a humble address that he realized that he couldn't get his MPs to back him, that he was forced to release the files. Now, the police have said that they don't want things released that may prejudice their case. I think that is fair enough. We're not interested in what Peter Mandelson got up to. The police can investigate that. We are interested in who knew what, when, and how the appointment came to be made. That has nothing to do with the criminal investigation. And if they're so scared, I'm very happy to go into a room and have a look and see myself so that we understand that. The Intelligence and Security Committee is a safe place. They see lots of top secret information all the time. But please do not let Keir Starmer confuse you by telling you that his appointment of a man with his associations with the paedophile was national security or international relations or it's a police investigation. He is hiding. He will do anything and everything he can to stay in office, and he is going to use every trick in the book. Do not buy it. He's been got banged to rights, and we need to make sure that the truth comes out and everything that went on is exposed. Yeah. Martin Brown, The Express.
Thank you. What should the public be most worried about? The fact that Keir Starmer gave Mandelson the job when he knew that he'd stayed matey with Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction, or the fact that we have a Prime Minister now who has no authority in his own party and within Parliament? Thank you.
Martin, I think it's both. This is why I'm making that offer to Labour MPs, that those of you who think this is untenable, and many of them do, I saw their faces at Prime Minister's questions. They looked sick as they were listening to him confess that he always knew. They know that there is a problem. Up until now, Britain has not been governed. All those examples I gave, their inability to get legislation through, the ridiculous budget of 2024, the worst budget of 2025, hitting pubs, small businesses, farmers, the endless U-turns. He hasn't been able to govern even during his supposed honeymoon period. There is no way he's going to be able to govern now. That is a serious problem. That is what I'm trying to draw attention to. That as salacious as all these details about Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson may be, we need to really think about what matters, what is happening to our country while these unserious people are dancing around the key issues and clinging to power in Downing Street, or whatever you might call it, because as you say, they are in office but not in power. Kitty Donaldson, BI.
Thank you. I was just wondering, do you think it would make any difference if Sir Keir Starmer sacks Morgan McSweeney? And secondly, is there anyone in the cabinet you admire, Wes Streeting, for instance?
Is there anyone in the cabinet that I admire? No. Some of them are better than others. I think Shabana Mahmood is someone who shows that she's better than her colleagues. I doubt that they will ever let her have a go, but I think that she is at least honest about the problems that the country is facing and doesn't pander. Sorry, what was the beginning of your question? Would it make any difference if he sacks Morgan McSweeney? I think to some extent. I think that what has happened is so serious, someone should go for it. Someone needs to take responsibility. That's why we asked for the files to be released. It's not so that we can read lots of juicy gossip about Mandelson. It is so that we know who took that decision and when, because it embarrassed our country on the international stage. It made us weaker from a national security perspective. It left us exposed. Someone needs to take responsibility. And all we're hearing from Keir Starmer is, Peter Mandelson lied to me. They're trying to put it all on Peter Mandelson. It is not all on Peter Mandelson. It is also on Downing Street. And I think that if it's not Keir Starmer, then it should be Morgan McSweeney. Both of them have a lot to answer for, and both of them are hiding. And finally, Noah Hoffman from The Sun.
Thank you, Kemi. Just quickly turning to crime and justice. A jury has acquitted 6 Palestine Action activists who mounted a raid on an Israeli defense company's factory. There are now some questions over potential tampering with the jury. You want to put out a strong message about criminal damage. I was wondering what you make of this situation and what actions you plan to take, if any, in response to it.
I believe you were talking about the case where a police officer's spine was broken. I think it's absolutely disgusting. I think that we have police officers and so many others who put themselves on the front line, and for people to attack them so viciously in that way and get away with it, that sends a very, very bad message about criminal activity, about our justice system. There should be an appeal. I think it needs to be looked at again. I haven't heard the allegations about jury tampering, but if we are a country where you can break the spine of a police officer and get away with it, then we are in serious trouble. And what I want to hear is what the government is going to be doing about it. And right now, they're not doing anything about it. They're not saying anything about it because they're all trying to delete their emails and worried about who's going to be caught in this scandal. This is what I'm talking about, that there's so many things that are being degraded. I have said that a lot in our country is broken. Our country is not broken, but a lot is. The politics is broken. There are a lot of issues in the judicial system. There are problems with borders. There are problems with public order. We need to start getting real solutions to that. Many of those things, we didn't fix properly in government. Some of them we did, but now is the time. We've come up with better plans. We have plans to have more police officers. We have plans to fix the borders to make sure that people who come in are people who should be here, and so much more. That's what I want us to be talking about. And people can disagree with what we're offering, but at least let's talk about the real issues. Instead, we're talking about whatever new milestone Keir Starmer has cooked up in the morning and what he may or may not have said to Peter Mandelson. Britain is not being governed. I think it is time that we get serious and get back to business. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that was the second of two extraordinary press conferences, one from the Prime Minister and latterly from the leader of His Majesty's most loyal opposition, Kemi Badenoch, both, of course, focusing on this Mandelson row. What did the Prime Minister know and when?
Indeed, questions that I still don't think any of you, Phil, have been answered. And the problem we've got now, Tom, is that whatever the Prime Minister says about any subject, nobody is going to believe a word he says. And we want someone who's going to be running the country rather than worrying about what excuse he's going to come up with for the current mess. And that is where we are now.
That is exactly where we are now. This is, of course, Good Afternoon Britain. My name's Tom Harwood.
I'm Dawn Neeson.
And Sir Keir Starmer has apologised for believing Peter Mandelson and appointing him, saying that he was misled about the true nature of Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
The answers he gave were lies. He portrayed Epstein as someone he barely knew. And when that became clear, and it was not true, I sacked him. Such deceit is incompatible with public service.
Yes, that's the Prime Minister there saying that the level of deceit is incompatible with public service. I'm assuming he was talking about Peter Mandelson. As pressure intensifies over this Starmer, his judgment and his grip on Number 10.
Well, joining us is the assistant content editor at The Spectator and Telegraph contributor, William Atkinson. William, this was a very difficult press conference for the Prime Minister. He was struggling, he was squirming, but quite frankly, he was also deeply prepared. I noticed some of the language that he was using was incredibly particular, almost as if it had been written up by a lawyer.
Well, yes, it's quite funny, really, that the Prime Minister was at a cricket pavilion, I believe, because he is on rather a sticky wicket. Yes, it was fascinating sort of language that he was using, because in some ways it's Keir Starmer on home turf, as you say, not only being sort of pointedly lawyerly about exactly what happened